Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. Even with the added layer, her look was unmistakably reminiscent of the Myra from 2 years ago, the former she-devil of Fairy Tale. Some of the older guildmates, especially those who'd been victims of the old brawls, did a double take when they saw her. But when Myra began handing out cake with that same gentle, sunny smile she'd become known for, everyone relaxed. She was still Myra. Just more complete now. A version of herself that had accepted both the past and the present. Some people gave Rhodes sympathetic glances, those who knew how tough it could be to keep up with Myra in her devilish phase. But that sympathy quickly shifted to envy. Because Myra, dressed in her classic confident style but carrying the softness of who she'd become, was nothing short of stunning. The two of them passed out cake side by side. It felt less like a birthday and more like a couple handing out sweets after a wedding ceremony. And while they offered cake, not everyone tasted the same flavor. Some people found it sweet. Others, maybe a little bitter. Happy birthday. Happy birthday, Myra. Myra received well wishes from every corner of the guild. Rhodes stood beside her, nodding gratefully and echoing the thanks. It wasn't an official party, but that didn't stop the guild from raising their glasses and cheering to Myra. After the celebration, the guild returned to its usual hustle and bustle. Judging by the progress, the rooftop would be completed in about 2 weeks. If the interior decoration went smoothly, the newly rebuilt Fairy Tale Guild Hall would be finished by mid-September. A 3-story guild house, complete with a rooftop clock tower, a basement, and renovated courtyards, completed in under 2 months. That was no small feat. It had only been possible thanks to everyone working overtime, and thanks to the wise leadership of Master Makarov, who mostly rushed to the construction front lines and left the paperwork to others. By day's end, work finally wrapped up. Myra and Rhodes stayed behind to handle some finishing tasks and do their usual meditation training together. Elfman had chosen to head home to train on his own. It wasn't that he didn't want to join them, he just knew when to give them space. When the meditation was done, Myra let out a soft sigh and stretched her arms high overhead. Rhodes watched quietly from the side, completely captivated. The sight of Myra smiling under the moonlight, eyes gleaming, silver hair tied back with a ribbon, shook something inside him. If it had been anyone else watching her like that, they might have earned a glare or worse. But when Rhodes looked at her that way, it only made Myra smile more brightly. She slipped her arms around his. "Let's go. Before we head home," Rhodes said with a grin. "I want to take you somewhere." Myra didn't question him. "Lead the way." A few minutes later, she blinked at the familiar building before her. "Your place?" "Not just that," he replied mischievously. Before she could press him further, Rhodes swept her into his arms and leapt upward in 2 bounds, landing softly on the rooftop. He gently set her down. "Wait here a second." The light was dim, and Myra could just barely make out his silhouette as he jumped back down and fiddled with something on the ground below. A moment later, a faint flicker of firelight sparked to life. Rhodes returned to her side, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Get ready. Here it comes." Whoosh. Snap. Even though she had guessed what it was, Myra's eyes widened as the first firework painted the sky in radiant color. Whoosh. Pop. Whoosh. Pop. One after another, the fireworks soared, bursting into dazzling blossoms above them. The entire rooftop glowed with shifting shades of gold, crimson, and blue. "It's beautiful," Myra whispered, leaning into Rhodes, the warmth of his arm around her making the night feel even more magical. As the final firework shimmered across the heavens, Myra turned to him with a glowing smile. She wrapped her arms around his neck and pulled him into a kiss, soft, slow, and full of feeling. Rhodes shifted his legs against Myra's, his fingers lightly tracing the fabric of her knee-high socks while his other hand brushed past her armpit. Myra pretended not to notice his little advances. Or rather, she'd grown increasingly fond of them lately. Their kiss lingered, leaving them both in a breathless, flustered pause. Myra felt something pressing against her leg, but instead of pulling away, she tightened her arms around Rhodes, her thighs subtly shifting closer. Rhodes's heartbeat stuttered, his breath turning heavy. Though he tried to play it cool, his grip around her waist instinctively tightened. He wanted to sweep her off her feet. Literally. And carry her downstairs. Myra made a half-hearted attempt to resist, but her lips parted in a soft gasp, her legs rubbing together nervously. Rhodes held her even closer, his gaze locking onto hers. In that moment, an unspoken understanding passed between them. Myra's cheeks burned crimson. Chapter 375, Guild reconstruction is complete. The fireworks had long since faded, leaving only the faint scent of smoke lingering in the air. Above them, a slim crescent moon hung quietly in the sky. Distant lanterns from scattered houses barely reached this quiet corner of the city. Rhodes and Myra stayed close, neither of them speaking. Time passed in a gentle silence, the moment suspended like a held breath. Then, without warning, Rhodes let out a long sigh. Myra froze, cheeks flushed red-hot, and tucked herself deeper into his embrace to hide her face. Her thoughts were a chaotic mess, and her heart was racing uncontrollably. Rhodes buried his face in her soft silver hair. He held her close for a few more seconds, then finally loosened his arms. He was about to say, "I'm going to go take a shower." But before he could finish, Myra sprang up like a startled kitten. "Don't follow me," she yelped, tugging at her vest as she leapt nimbly from the rooftop and dashed off into the night in a flustered panic. Of course Rhodes had to follow her. But not like this. Instead, he quietly made his way downstairs and headed for the bathroom. The warm water cascading from the shower helped cool the leftover heat in his chest, slowly washing away the whirlwind of emotion. Now that he had a moment to think, Rhodes found himself oddly calm. Breaking it down logically, it was ridiculous how tense he'd gotten. They were already dating. They'd even talked about their future together. It was perfectly natural for things to occasionally get close. Still, it had caught him off guard. He used to joke with Elfman about guys who obsessed over legs, never imagining he'd understand the appeal so clearly one day. But what really mattered now wasn't what he thought, it was how Myra felt. There was no handbook for this. No experience to guide him. With a sigh, Rhodes turned the water temperature lower to help collect his thoughts. Meanwhile, under the soft glow of a distant streetlight, Myra had run quite a ways without realizing it. Only when she reached her own front door did she finally stop, pressing a hand to her chest and breathing heavily. She couldn't go back just yet, not like this. After a moment to catch her breath, she straightened her clothes, untied her hair and let it fall freely before tying it back up with care. Then, she bent slightly to adjust her stockings. But the moment her fingers brushed the pale strip of skin just above the stockings, her absolute zone, a memory surged back uninvited. That feeling. That sudden, unshakable, electric touch. The blush that had just begun to fade suddenly returned, brighter than before. Myra's cheeks burned hot with embarrassment as the memory replayed itself in her mind. What was she even doing back there? She groaned quietly, wanting nothing more than to bury her face in her pillow and pretend the night never happened. Back at his place, Rhodes switched on the fan and summoned Warm. He sliced off a small piece of cake and held it out. "Here, a little celebration treat." Warm bounced over joyfully, but when it realized the plate was still empty, it turned and stared at its master with wide, expectant eyes. "This is Myra's birthday cake," Rhodes said as he finally plated it and set it down. "Come on, wish Myra a happy birthday." "Hululu." Warm blinked innocently. "You think I can talk?" Whatever. It's the thought that counts." Rhodes chuckled and gave Warm a pat on the head. "Be good and stay here. If she gets mad and throws me out later, I'm calling you for backup." Hulu. Warm gave an enthusiastic nod. "As long as snacks are involved, I'm all in." Rhodes took a deep breath, steeled himself for the worst, and made his way over to Myra's house. From the street, he could see the soft glow from her bedroom window. She hadn't gone to sleep yet. He walked up to the front door and knocked gently. No answer. He tried again. This time, a small side window creaked open, and Elfman poked his head out with a tired look. Rhodes gave him a sheepish wave. "Hey, it's me. Mind letting me in?" Elfman scratched the back of his head. "Sis said not to open the door if you came knocking." Rhodes gave an awkward laugh. "We didn't really fight. It's just complicated." "What exactly did she tell you?" "Nothing specific," Elfman replied, resting his arms on the windowsill. "She came back acting weird. Kinda mad, but not all the way. I tried asking, but she just snapped at me." He narrowed his eyes. "You sure you didn't do something dumb?" "I swear it's not what it looks like." Rhodes gave a helpless smile. "She's just sorting things out, I guess." Elfman paused, then shrugged. "Well, I'm not supposed to open the door, but you want to climb in through the window instead?" Rhodes blinked. That was unexpectedly cooperative. If this were the old Elfman, fists might have been flying by now. But instead, he'd shared intel and even offered a way-in. Growth. Rhodes grinned. Nah. If I was gonna sneak in, I wouldn't use that window. He took a step back, looked up at Myra's second-story window, and called over his shoulder. You go get some rest. No need to get caught up in my drama. Elfman sighed and shut the window. Don't get caught up, he says. And he claims they didn't argue? Whatever. I'm staying out of it. Back outside, Rhodes crouched, sprang up with a light kick off the wall, and grabbed the edge of Myra's bedroom windowsill with practiced ease. Was sneaking in through the window a good idea? Rhodes hesitated for half a second before deciding. If anyone asked how he'd gotten up to the window, he'd just say he learned it from Natsu. He hoisted himself up with ease and peeked through the window. Thud. A pillow came flying with a shrill whistle and smacked him square inches the face. The force behind it actually knocked him down. A normal pillow shouldn't be able to hit that hard. His face stung slightly from the blow, but compared to the brawls he'd been through, this was child's play. Still, Rhodes figured it was better to play along. He caught the pillow midair, landed lightly on the ground. And then, without another word, flopped onto his back and covered his face with the pillow like he'd passed out cold. Myra waited. But no sound. No snarky comeback. No movement. Her expression shifted. She leaned out of the window, a flicker of panic rising in her chest, and then she jumped down. But the moment her feet touched the ground, she realized something felt off. Liar. She marched over, snatched the pillow away, and was met with a ridiculous face, eyes rolled back, lips curled into a crooked smirk. Whap. She smacked him again with the pillow, her cheeks puffed out in irritation. I told you not to chase me. Rhodes grinned from beneath the flurry of fluff. If I didn't come today, I might never get the chance again. Dusting himself off, he stood up and stretched lazily. Actually, Worm didn't get enough of your birthday cake yesterday. I came to see if there were any leftovers. Absolutely not. Who would believe that kind of nonsense? Myra turned away, exasperated, and walked back toward the door. Before heading inside, she tossed one final warning over her shoulder. Go home. Get some rest. Try again tomorrow. Rhodes did go home. And he slept like a log. The next morning, he showed up at the house fully refreshed and ready for another day. But today, it was Elfman who was on breakfast duty again. Myra came down the stairs yawning, looking a little grumpy and sleep-deprived. Rhodes opened his mouth to ask. But the look she shot him stopped him dead in his tracks. It wasn't just a look, it was a warning. Say one word about last night, and you'll regret it. Rhodes closed his mouth. Point taken. Best to pretend none of that ever happened. Still, he couldn't help but glance at her now and then. And in that quiet moment, one thing became very clear to him. I have to save up. Fast. And propose. But to do that, the guild needed to be finished first. From that day on, there was a new workaholic on the construction site. Rhodes wasn't the only one. Everyone's excitement grew as the building neared completion. Near the end of the project, many guild members stopped taking outside jobs just so they could stay and help out. Their hands were dirty, their clothes soaked in sweat, but their hearts were light. They were rebuilding their home. And at last, by the end of the month, it happened. The new headquarters of Fairy Tale was finally topped off. Dong the grand bell atop the tower rang out for the first time. Mikarov, who had climbed up to ring it himself, called out in a booming voice, Fairy Tale is complete. Ooh. The crowd below erupted into thunderous cheers. Rhodes and Myra stood in the midst of them, hands raised high, shouting together with joy and pride. Fairy Tale. IT's done. Rhodes looked up at the gleaming building with shining eyes. His first real home in this world. The most important place in his life. Was standing tall once more. Sure, the interiors still needed finishing, and the scaffolding hadn't been fully cleared. But just seeing the new guild hall take shape made his chest swell with excitement. The sound of the bell echoed through the town, drawing in curious townsfolk from nearby. When they saw the familiar emblem and the joyful atmosphere, many of them joined in. Mikarov raised his hand again, beaming, and shouted, the party starts now. Everyone's invited. Oh. Chapter 376, Asking for Leave? Mikarov, no. Everyone stayed up late in the spacious, brand new guild hall. Even though the strongest team members were off on missions, the likes of Mikao, Kana, and Lok were still around, and the atmosphere was bursting with laughter and energy. Some townspeople, curious about the festivities, came by to celebrate for a bit. But once it got late, they waved their goodbyes and headed home. As much as they admired the spirit of Fairy Tale, they couldn't party with the same wild abandon as the wizards. Rhodes, who had sworn not to get drunk again after the last time, still ended up completely wasted. It was all thanks to some troublemakers in the crowd, namely, Mikau and Wakaba, who made it their mission to get him drunk. Even Kana joined in with a whole barrel of booze. Come on. I'll drink a barrel, and you drink a glass. Cheers. What could he do? Rhodes was just too happy tonight to say no. In the end, everyone collapsed all over the guild floor. With no furniture in place yet, the open space was perfect for crashing out. Myra helped Rhodes sit against a wall. He clung to her tightly and slurred. Why are you totally fine? I'm a little dizzy. Myra said, casually twirling a lock of his hair between her fingers. Why are you so drunk? Rhodes reached for her hand, missed twice, and finally gave up. Myra caught his hand and chuckled, speaking in a mock-serious voice like she was scolding a child. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm a demon. She bared her teeth playfully. Scared yet? Hee hee. Rhodes giggled drowsily, his eyelids fluttering half shut. Then. Why are you so pretty? Myra puffed out her cheeks in frustration. Is this guy actually drunk? She tugged at his cheek in mock annoyance, but he'd already nodded off. And she could tell, it was genuine sleep this time. Myra smiled softly, leaned in, and planted a small kiss on his lips. Ugh, you smell like booze. She muttered with a face of exaggerated disgust. Keep drinking like this and next time. I'm not letting you in. Rhodes, still asleep, instinctively leaned closer, wrapped his arms around her waist, and nuzzled into her chest with a contented sigh. Myra said she didn't like the smell of alcohol, but in the end, she still hugged him back and drifted off to sleep. The next day, August 28th. After clearing away the mess from the night before, Rhodes and Myra went to find Makarov together. Master, we want to take the day off. Rhodes said politely. No. Makarov replied instantly, without even looking up. Master Myra put her hands on her hips and puffed out her cheeks, clearly expecting a more thoughtful response. Makarov clutched his chest in mock agony. Even if the building's done, we just started on the decorations today. If you two vanish, I might collapse from overwork. He groaned dramatically like he was moments from fainting. It was completely unconvincing. Then he paused, raised an eyebrow, and asked. Why do you want time off all of a sudden? Because today is the debut of that play Riza and Lucy are starring in. Rhodes explained. They sent us 2 tickets. Rhodes pulled out the tickets and waved them with a grin. The show was scheduled for the afternoon, and the tickets had been delivered that morning, clearly marked with reserved seating. Honestly, they weren't even sure how Riza and Lucy had gone from being supposed backstage helpers to full-on lead actresses, but that only made it more entertaining. After working non-stop on rebuilding the guild for weeks, taking a break for some fun felt well-deserved. Makarov rubbed his chin in exaggerated thought. Letting just 2 people go out to play didn't feel quite right. But if he let them go, then more might ask for time off and then the decorating work would stall. Suddenly, a glint of brilliance lit up in the old master's eyes. In that case, I hereby declare the entire guild gets a day off. Rhodes and Myra blinked. What? Hey. Makarov looked quite pleased with himself. Everyone's been working hard, take today off. And if you're curious, you can all go to Unibus together and support Riza and Lucy's debut. Hurrah! The guild members, who had been dragging their feet moments ago, were suddenly full of energy and excitement. Riza and Lucy, both head-turning beauties, on stage together? Surely, they'd be playing princesses or noble heroines, maybe even something romantic? Everyone was hyped. And as for the next month's rent and expenses, well, with the guild's main structure complete and the renovation budget mostly wrapped up, Makarov had promised to pay everyone according to fair market wages. Rhodes had even put together a detailed ledger tracking each person's contributions, how many hours they worked, which materials they helped carry, and how many bricks were laid. If this had been a regular construction company, the pay might have been lower. But this was fairy tale. Everyone had gone above and beyond, and the payout would be generous. Thankfully, Phantom Lord had been loaded, and the Magic Council's reconstruction grant wasn't stingy either. Rhodes and Myra exchanged a look. What was supposed to be a quiet date had now become a spontaneous guild-wide field trip. But that was fairy tale for you. Still, this wouldn't count as their proper day off. Rhodes made a mental note to take Myra somewhere nice after the renovations were truly complete. And next time, even if Makarov clung to his leg and cried, he wouldn't back down. Meanwhile, Max spotted Loke trying to sneak away quietly. Loke, you're not coming? He asked with a grin. I heard Gray's going to be on stage too. But Loke just gave a flashy pose and said coolly. Nah, I've got a date today. I've been busy for ages, so I need to spend time with my girlfriends. Later. Warren folded his arms, thoroughly unimpressed. Did he just say girlfriends plural? Max sighed. That's just how he is. Rhodes frowned. Something about Loke didn't sit right with him. It wasn't just the aftermath of a hangover, he'd noticed this weird behavior starting last month. He leaned over and whispered to Myra. She nodded. Now that Rhodes brought it up, she realized she'd noticed the same thing. Loke had seemed off lately. If it didn't improve, they'd have to knock him out and drag him to Poorly Uzuka for a checkup. Getting to Unibas was easy. Just hop on the train from Magnolia, it was the very next stop. A small group from the guild decided to tag along and show their support, including Master Mikarov himself. More than 30 of them piled into a single carriage like a whirlwind. It honestly looked like Fairy Tale had reserved the whole train. Rhodes quietly tugged at Myra's sleeve, wanting to move to a different car, not for romance, but for safety. This carriage felt like a time bomb. One wrong word and someone might punch a wall or blow something up. But it wouldn't be right to ditch everyone, especially if it meant leaving the master to deal with all the madness alone. Fortunately, it was only a short ride, and they managed to make it without disaster. It's still as bustling as ever. Someone remarked upon stepping onto the platform at Unibus. Kana stretched her arms and grinned. I want to explore first. There's gotta be some great pubs around here. Mikhail warned. Don't get drunk before the play even starts. You're so uptight. Kana muttered, waving him off. Mikarov cleared his throat and took charge. Alright, everyone listen up. First, we go to the theater to get tickets. After that, you're free to do what you want, just be back at the theater before the curtain rises. He already knew Rhodes and Myra had tickets, so they'd definitely sneak off early for a little one-on-one time. Which was perfect. Once he got everyone their tickets, he could slip off with Kana for a few drinks without anyone bugging him. No, wait. As guild master, it was his responsibility to look after Kana, a sweet girl with a tragic tendency to get hammered and cause chaos. Yes. That was definitely his duty as an adult. Mikarov nodded to himself, proud of his clever plan. Chapter 377, This Princess is So White. Unibas was a thriving city with booming commerce, its prosperity even surpassed that of Magnolia. Like Magnolia, a beautiful canal flowed through the heart of the city. Once Master Mikarov announced free time, Rhodes and Myra opted for a relaxing boat ride down the canal. The boats were the kind used for sightseeing, specifically designed for tourists. The two sat closely together, listening to the gentle rhythm of oars paddling behind them and watching the fish dart away beneath the water's surface. After the boat ride, they explored the interesting places they had seen along the way, picked out outfits for each other, and sampled all the tempting local cuisine. Whenever they found something particularly delicious, they packed some up to bring back for Elfman and saved a portion for Worm. While browsing the market, they overheard chatter about Rissa's upcoming performance. The Shazad Theater was putting on a play titled Frederick and the Angelica. At first glance, it sounded like a cliché fairy tale, something about a prince rescuing a princess. But apparently, flyers had been handed out by a flying cat, and word on the street was that real wizards were involved in the show, adding a magical twist that sparked a lot of excitement. A growing crowd of townspeople expressed interest, saying they plan to attend the show. Sounds like it's going to be a hit even before it starts. Myra said with a proud smile, listening to the surrounding buzz. I'm going to win the bet again. I just hope they don't mess it up. Rhodes replied with a sigh. He didn't mind losing the bet, he just wanted his friends to succeed for once. By the time the show was about to begin, the theater was packed to the brim. They had no idea what the plot actually involved, but the promotion was clearly effective. Whoever handled it did a fantastic job. Rhodes and Myra followed the tide of people into the theater. At the entrance stood a large billboard displaying a dashing knight, a fearsome dragon, and a radiant princess. I've got a bad feeling about this. Rhodes muttered, staring at the dragon on the poster. He already knew who'd be playing that part. Myra giggled. It's going to be amazing. The fairy tale group was seated in one large section. From a distance, Rhodes and Myra spotted their guildmates, Master Mikarov already tipsy, and Kana slumped beside him, clearly matching his pace. Myra frowned. The master's drinking again? He was drunk yesterday, and now this? Rhodes nodded. I know. He really needs to cut back. For someone his age, drinking that heavily every day was not a good idea. The theater was noisy and brimming with anticipation. When the lights dimmed, the crowd finally quieted down. Well, except for the fairy tale section, which was still a bit rowdy. Things only settled when the soft, elegant sound of a harp filled the air. The melody came from Lyra, one of Lucy's celestial spirits. As the harp's notes faded into the background, Lyra's singing began, gentle, airy, and mesmerizing. The entire audience fell under her spell. It's beautiful. Myra murmured, resting her chin on her hands. Her heart swelled with warm memories and happiness, as if the music awakened something peaceful inside her. The magic of the celestial spirits was truly remarkable. Yeah. Rhodes agreed, voice low. Even he couldn't bring himself to say, "You sing better," before the music ended. If there was one flaw, though, it was the lyrics. They were terrible. Aside from naming the prince and princess, the words held no real meaning. As an opera, the play was clearly off to a rocky start. If not for Lyra's beautiful voice, the audience might have started booing already. No wonder the theater had been struggling with attendance. Then the curtain rose. Mirza stepped onto the stage wearing men's clothes. As Lyra's music came to a close, Mirza struck a dramatic pose and delivered her first line, "My name is..." And just like that, the confident aura she'd entered with completely vanished. Mirza's delivery was stiff and awkward. Her voice trembled, and her body looked rigid and unnatural. From an acting perspective, it was a disaster. But the fairy tale members in the audience were thrilled. Seeing Mirza, the usually fearless and commanding Titania, fumble so nervously on stage? Adorable. Watching professional actors perform was one thing, but watching your friends and guildmates stumble through a stage play? That was a whole different experience. Myra was already laughing out loud, clearly enjoying herself. Seeing Mirza, normally so stoic and composed, fumble around on stage was just too funny. Then Lucy made her entrance, suspended by a rope in true dramatic fashion as the damsel princess. Shortly after, Gray appeared in the role of the villain. But there was an immediate problem. The name he introduced himself with was completely different from the villain's name Lucy had mentioned moments before. The lines kept changing on the fly, the characters' names shifted randomly, and the audience began to grow confused. But then, Gray suddenly summoned a gleaming ice sword, and floating blade circled Drazimit scene. The audience, who had been considering walking out and demanding refunds, sat back down in stunned awe. The script might have been a disaster, but the magic effects? Genuinely spectacular. Even with all the chaos, it was undeniably fun to watch the fairy tale crew having a blast. That joy was contagious. Two very different groups of spectators, random theatergoers and the guild family watched on, thoroughly entertained but for entirely different reasons. Then came the entrance of Happy, fluttering onto stage dragging along a very reluctant dragon who was clearly Natsu inside a dragon mascot costume. That's when all hell broke loose. Natsu, fully committed to the bit, started breathing real flames, completely overdoing it. And because Happy fumbled with the rope holding the costume steady, Natsu tripped and crashed straight through the stage. In the chaos of falling, he let loose another massive blast of fire. The set caught fire. Props were demolished. And worst of all, Princess Lucy's dress caught on fire. Sitting in the front row, Rhodes could feel the actual wave of heat coming off the stage. This performance had completely spiraled into madness. Still, he wasn't too worried. Gray was on stage, and there were plenty of capable wizards in the audience if things got worse. Lucy, panicking with her skirt ablaze, rushed toward Gray for help. But before Gray could react, Mirza stepped forward without hesitation and drew her sword in one swift motion. Shing! With surgical precision, she slashed the burning fabric away. The cut was so clean that Lucy's clothes were shredded. But her skin wasn't even nicked. Rhodes saw it clearly, not a single scratch. Just smooth, pale skin left behind where the scorched dress had been. "Oh! Oh!" gasped a section of the audience. Mikhail and the other older guildmates had hearts practically leaping out of their eyes. Best show ever. This ticket was so worth it. Pinch. HRK. Rhodes winced as Myra pinched his waist. But to his relief, she didn't force him to look away. After all, Mirza was already one step ahead. She quickly swept off her cloak and draped it over Lucy's shoulders. "Princess. Are you all right?" she asked in her stiffest stage voice. Still flustered, Lucy snapped. "You guys are the worst actors. Princess, I shall defeat the villain at once," Mirza declared with trembling determination. Meanwhile, on the other side of the stage, Natsu had fully embraced his role as a dragon, perhaps a little too seriously. He continued to unleash roaring bursts of flame, tearing apart what little remained of the set. Gray, who had been holding it together up to this point, took a fireball straight to the chest. And being Gray, there was no way he was just going to stand there and take it. Thus began an all-out magical brawl between Natsu, Gray, and Mirza, right on stage. Back in the audience, sweat beaded down Mikarov's forehead. A twitch started in the corner of his eye. His instincts screamed that something terrible was coming. And sure enough, just as he feared, the entire Shazad theater began to shake. Crack. Boom. A massive rupture split the stage right down the middle. The elegant building groaned, cracked, and finally collapsed in spectacular fashion, breaking cleanly in half. Mikarov was shaking now, eyes wide, lips trembling. But he still acted fast, throwing up a glowing golden magic circle to shield the audience from debris. Ah! Ha ha ha! Myra laughed as the dust clouded the air. It happened again. It's hard to fight one's true nature. Rhodes said with a sigh. Versus. Still acting? Sure enough, standing in the rubble, Mirza hadn't missed a beat. Cloak billowing, sword raised high, she continued her performance as the noble prince. Not even the destruction of the theater could break her focus. It was clear she wouldn't stop until she'd rescued Lucy by thoroughly pummeling both Natsu and Gray, and carrying Lucy off into the sunset. Back among the ruins, Mikhail whispered to Makarov. So. What now, master? Makarov inhaled slowly, his face pale and grim. We run. Run fast. No one must ever find out we're connected to those maniacs. He might be the guild master, and yes, he'd definitely end up having to write yet another self-reflection letter to the Magic Council, but that could wait until after he vanished for a day or two. And so, the entire fairy tale crew launched into a full retreat. As for the culprits? Well, they'd better find a way to fix what they'd just destroyed. Yet, to everyone's surprise, the audience was thrilled. Despite the chaos and destruction, the spectators didn't panic. In fact, they laughed, clapped, and cheered at the utter spectacle. Many stayed to the very end. Chapter 378, September. I hope Rhodes is okay. Makarov led the entire guild in a frantic escape, without a shred of loyalty. As the last remaining shred of conscience in Fairy Tale, Rhodes decided to stay behind and see how things would play out. Myra stayed too. Rhodes suspected she might have done it just to see how this disaster unfolded for fun. No, surely not. Myra was kind at heart. Definitely. Strangely, the audience didn't seem alarmed by Fairy Tale's mass exodus. Perhaps they assumed it was part of the performance. In fact, they followed suit with noisy cheers and applause, fleeing the theater as if it were scripted, fully immersed in the drama. It was as if watching the entire stage crumble after a ferocious battle was just another interactive moment for the extras. The crowd seemed thrilled, even more engaged as they made their dramatic escape. In the end, all that was left of the once grand theater was a pile of smoldering rubble. And standing atop the wreckage, in the spotlight that no longer existed, were the survivors, Natsu and Gray, knocked flat on the ground, Mirza standing tall as she took a proud bow, and Lucy, who tugged her cloak tighter around herself as she offered a hesitant, reluctant bow. At that moment, Mirza truly believed she had delivered a powerful and meaningful performance. Lucy, on the other hand, was still wondering whether this had been a success or an absolute catastrophe. Myra approached, clapping with a bright smile. Congratulations. That was a resounding success. Thank you. Mirza replied solemnly, accepting the praise with all the grace of a professional actor. Though I still have much to improve, I appreciate your support. Lucy blinked. Wait. This counts as a success? Of course it does. Myra said with certainty. Everyone left with big smiles. Rhodes nodded beside her. If the audience was happy, then that's a success. That's actually kind of nice. Lucy said, her expression softening. Then her eyes widened. Wait. I think I saw Master and the others. Weren't they all here earlier? Rhodes said. Master brought the whole guild to see the show. But once he realized how much damage was done to the theater, he ran off with everyone to avoid footing the bill. Ah. Lucy clutched her head, horrified. The entire theater collapsed. She was always a little slow to process chaos. It's all right. Really? Said a voice from behind the broken stage. A middle-aged man stepped forward, Rabian, the director of the Shazad Theater and the client who'd hired them in the first place. With a calm smile, Rabian said. No need to pay for damages. I'll even honor the payment I promised. Thank you. But? The group echoed. You'll have to stay, thank you. And continue performing. For at least a week, thank you. It seemed thank you was his verbal tick. Polite or persistent? Rhodes figured it was probably both. No problem. Mirza agreed before Lucy could even speak, eyes sparkling. We'll perform as many times as you want. She already looked ready to dive straight into rehearsals. Lucy wanted to complain that Mirza had agreed far too quickly, but then again, considering the damage they caused, working to pay it off felt like the only reasonable option. Still, she turned to Myra hesitantly. Is working off the debt really okay? Myra gave her a reassuring smile. If the client says so, and you agree, then it's fine. I guess there's no other choice. Lucy sighed. She definitely couldn't afford to pay for an entire building. Rabian immediately perked up. Then let's get moving. Thank you. We'll begin clearing the ruins and set up an outdoor stage right away. At this point, Rabian no longer cared about the theater building. He'd realized these wizards were the real spectacle. Oh. Miss Mara Jane, isn't it? Thank you. Rabian rushed over to Myra, rubbing his hands with hopeful energy. Would you consider joining our acting troupe? Thank you. Rhodes, who'd raised his fist instinctively, relaxed. He thought the man was charging in for a fight. Myra smiled sweetly and waved her hand. Thank you for the invitation, but we've got our own responsibilities. We'll be heading back soon. What a shame. Thank you. Rabian sighed, genuinely disappointed. Anyway, we'll take our leave for now. Rhodes said. The guild renovation starts tomorrow, and there's a lot to prepare. He found Rabian likable enough. With Riza involved, he didn't worry they'd be treated unfairly. Suddenly, Natsu and Gray sprang to their feet. Wait, the guild renovation's finished? Rhodes nodded. Darn it. We stayed here for too long and missed such a big moment. Natsu groaned. You can still help with the next phase. Rhodes said flatly. But try not to cause any more disasters. Riza thumped her chest armor confidently. Don't worry. I've got it all under control. However, things never quite go as expected. They had parted ways on August 28th, and it was now September 8th when they finally reunited back at the guild. Even though they had taken a day to rest after returning, Lucy, Natsu, Gray, and even Happy looked completely worn out. Only Riza, bright-eyed and full of energy, stepped up to the counter and handed in their mission report. Being an actor was a great experience. I'd love to do something like that again. No way. Lucy groaned, slumping over the counter. Despite being exhausted, she still had the strength to complain. How is Riza still this energetic? Isn't it wonderful to bring joy and comfort to an audience through a moving performance? Riza said, her eyes sparkling with conviction. To help them forget their troubles, even just for a little while. That's meaningful work. She practically radiated with righteousness and pride. Our performance wasn't nearly that noble. Lucy whimpered. And that director pushed us way too hard. We had to do 3 shows a day. The worst part was that their client wasn't some villain they could beat up. No, they had wrecked his theater, and Riza was treating the whole thing like sacred duty. And apparently, the man had been divorced by his wife because she didn't support his passion for the arts. Lucy just didn't have the heart to get mad at someone like that. Well, Myra said gently, smiling all the while. At least you got paid in the end, right? That's something. Yeah. I guess. Lucy sighed. Technically, she did get compensated. But emotionally? Never again. But I have to say, I was really surprised when I came back. The guild's renovation looks amazing. Not quite done yet. Myra replied. Only the first floor's finished so far. Listen carefully, you can still hear the construction upstairs. It'll be a few more days before everything's complete. That's fine. The place already feels much bigger, even though the footprint hasn't changed. Lucy said, leaning on the counter and glancing around. That's because they redesigned the layout. Most of the old rooms have been shifted upstairs or down to the basement. Myra explained. Then something came to mind. Oh. The bar's hiring new servers. Lucy, want to give it a try? I'm more into adventuring than serving drinks. Myra gave her a sly grin. They might give you a really cute server uniform who would become a waitress just for the uniform? Lucy rolled her eyes. But to her dismay, Riza perked up instantly, stars in her eyes. What kind of uniform? Can I try it on? Lucy face-palmed. I forgot. She's the real danger here. Myra giggled behind her hand. Riza was definitely the most enthusiastic one when it came to this sort of thing. Hey. I haven't seen Mr. Rhodes around. He's in the library. Myra replied, her tone slightly cooler. It was just renovated yesterday. He's helping clean and organize it. With Levy. She added, pouting faintly. Miss Myra, are you okay? Lucy asked cautiously. I'm fine. Myra said, swirling an empty wine glass between her fingers. Rhodes and Levy get along well. He's even been learning some word magic from her. Nothing strange about 2 people spending time alone in a dim little room. Though she didn't say anything else, the temperature seemed to drop a few degrees. Riza, blissfully unaware, nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. Rhodes also asked me about requip magic once. We were alone in a room too. It's totally normal. Lucy stared at the cup in Myra's hand, now visibly cracked. She leaned in toward Riza and whispered. Maybe don't say anything else. I think Rhodes might already be in trouble. Chapter 379, Loke's mission. Rhodes was carefully planning the layout of the guild library. Since the renovation had expanded the space, he and Levy were taking the opportunity to redesign its interior. How about putting the history books at the very back? Rhodes suggested. Levy thought for a moment, then nodded. Good idea. I don't think many people besides us actually read them anyway. That went for most of the books in the library, really. Even though it was officially the guild library, in practice, it felt more like a private study shared by a few dedicated readers. When the guild's new layout was being planned, the space for the library had been mapped out according to Levy's preferences. Now, how the shelves were arranged and how the books would be organized was entirely up to her and Rhodes. To make finding books easier in the future, Rhodes also decided to create a full catalog while shelving them. Levy wheeled over the rolling ladder to a nearby bookshelf. Rhodes opened up boxes of stored books he'd pulled from the warehouse and passed them to her one by one. She arranged them by category and title while he recorded the order in a logbook. Working together like this didn't feel tiring at all, though Rhodes did occasionally feel a faint chill run down his spine. Maybe the library was just a bit drafty. "This is going to take a while," Rhodes said as he eyed the many still empty shelves. "By the way, I haven't seen Jet or Droy today. Weren't they supposed to help? They said being around this many books gave them a headache." Levy replied casually, showing no particular reaction to the mention of her childhood friends. Besides, they wanted to handle a few solo missions for a change. Rhodes got the impression that the two were trying to prove something to her, but he didn't comment on it. He just silently wished them luck on their assignments. "Hey, by the way," Levy said, suddenly remembering something. "Someone set off fireworks on Myra's birthday, right?" Rhodes nodded. "Yeah. That was me." "Wow." Levy's eyes sparkled with a mix of surprise and admiration. "That sounds so romantic, just the two of you watching fireworks together." Then, leaning in with a grin, she teased. "So, how far have you and Myra gotten?" Rhodes gave her a sidelong glance. Levy's tone was playful, but her question was surprisingly earnest. He answered honestly. "I've actually been thinking about what kind of wedding ring to get her." Wedding?" Levy gasped, clapping both hands over her mouth, her cheeks flushing pink. She had only wanted to fluster him a little, but instead, she'd stumbled onto a bombshell. Rhodes tilted his head, slightly puzzled. Girls in Magnolia often wore bold outfits with confidence, but the moment the word marriage came up, they blushed like schoolgirls. Levy was no exception. She often wore dresses without batting an eye, but now her face was bright red. Maybe she was like Ursa, secretly fantasizing about the perfect wedding? "Yeah." Rhodes continued, smiling. "We've decided we're going to be together forever." Thinking Myra would have enjoyed seeing Levy's expression, he decided to stir the pot a little more. "Say, Levy, if someone proposed to you, what kind of setting would you dream of?" "Me?" Levy turned even redder, flustered. Images of the beach at sunset, a hillside covered in wildflowers, the front steps of the guild, so many scenes flashed through her mind. But in the end, she just covered her face with her hands. How should I know?" Rhodes chuckled and let her off the hook. It was a pity Myra hadn't been there to enjoy the teasing too. By the time evening rolled around, it was time for his training session with Myra. But something was definitely off about her tonight. Ever since dinner, she kept sneaking glances at him, saying nothing, looking away, and then glancing again. During their meditation, she deliberately sat farther away than usual. Suspiciously far. Rhodes finally spoke up, trying to feel things out. "You tired today?" Myra replied curtly. "No." He tried again. "Want to rest a bit before we start?" Myra, oh. That one word, "oh," carried such weight that Rhodes felt a headache coming on. Trying to think optimistically, she was definitely mad. But why? Was it because of the last time with Lucy? Or the other time with Lucy? But both of those were ages ago, and one of them was clearly Riz's fault, and the other was because of Natsu. He hadn't done anything himself. Now came the classic conundrum: how do you comfort a girlfriend when she's upset? Step 1, figure out why she's angry. Unfortunately, that was always the hardest part. Rhodes didn't have a mind-reading spell like Warren, and he couldn't see into Myra's thoughts. Asking her directly was out of the question too. That usually just reminded her of why she was mad in the first place, and made her even angrier. So he had to rely on deduction. Rhodes mentally reviewed his entire day. He'd been on his best behavior. They were fine in the morning. They hadn't even crossed paths all afternoon. After a moment, he arrived at a possible guess. Skipping all logic and self-preservation, Rhodes boldly ignored Myra's frosty demeanor and slid over to hug her. "What are you doing?" Myra protested, lightly pushing at his chest, but not hard enough to actually make him move. Rhodes tightened his embrace, resting his cheek against her hair. "Nothing. I just hadn't seen you all afternoon, and I missed you. I felt empty." "You're such a liar." Myra huffed, clearly unconvinced. "How could you be lonely with Levy helping you the whole time?" Her push gained a bit more strength. "Let go." "Ah, that was the reason." So it was because he'd been working with Levy. That sealed it, he definitely couldn't let go now. Rhodes leaned in closer and whispered near her ear. "I've been thinking about you all afternoon. I swear. It's good to have you here. So good to have you here. And if I'm lying, May I be doomed to be bossed around by my future wife every day of our marriage in the next life. Ugh. Gross. Myra's ears turned red, and she gave him another shove. Let go already. Rhodes couldn't see her face, but he could feel the push had lost its edge. Nope. Finally, Myra let out a sigh and gave up, returning his hug, at least for now. Levy and Riza were, for the moment, entirely forgotten. In a quiet voice, she murmured. If you don't let go, how are we supposed to train? Then. Just hold me a little longer. Then we'll take a break. Fine. After a moment, Rhodes added. Tell Elfman to ease up on the chores tomorrow morning. I'll bring you some cakes. Cakes? Myra's absolute favorite. No. She whispered, breathing in his familiar scent and resting her face against his chest. We're supposed to be saving money. Don't waste it. And so, on September 8th, X784, Rhodes survived another of Riza's accidental traps and made it through Myra's cold shoulder alive. 3 days later. With Myra frequently getting roped in to help, the guild library was finally sorted and organized. The guild's renovation was also coming along nicely. Just yesterday, Makarov had a sudden brainwave. He wanted to open a shop right at the guild entrance, one that sold fairy tale-themed merchandise. Mugs, towels, pendants, all stamped with the fairy tale emblem. He even planned to create collectible figures of the guild's most popular wizards. Rhodes, Myra, Ursa, Natsu. All were under consideration. However, Rhodes wasn't exactly thrilled about this development. The thought of someone buying and playing with a figure that looked like him gave him the creeps. What's more, their ever untrustworthy guild master was actually planning to design figures of the female wizards with removable clothing, an idea Rhodes immediately and firmly objected to. At the very least, shouldn't we ask for their consent first? Rhodes said, frowning. Makarov turned to Myra, indignant. What do you think? Myra just smiled sweetly. You can take it up with Rhodes. That's the problem. I can't get through to him. Makarov grumbled, reaching behind the bar for a bottle of wine. Myra lightly slapped his hand away. Master, your alcohol ban still has 1 month to go. Wasn't it just half a month? It was. But I've added another half month. Why? Makarov's mouth dropped open, and his whole face turned pale with despair. Just then, Loke walked up to the counter with a job request form. Master, Myra, I'd like to take this one. Makarov.x had crashed. Myra took the form and read it over. Let's see. Apprehend a rogue wizard who's been using magic to abduct women. She looked up and studied Loke's face. You don't look well. Are you sure you're up for this kind of mission? I'm fine. Loke said, adjusting his glasses and flashing a suave grin. It's my solemn duty to protect women in distress. Not as handsome as Rhodes, Myra suddenly thought. Then blinked, surprised at herself. She shook the thought away and nodded toward the space behind Loke. Is that your girlfriend over there? Huh? Loke turned his head, and immediately collapsed like a sack of potatoes, overwhelmed by a sudden wave of exhaustion. Chapter 380, Exiled. What happened just now? I think I saw Rhodes carrying Loke out. Wasn't Loke just chatting with Myra? Oh, did he try to flirt with Myra and got knocked out by Rhodes? Well, he had it coming. You think Rhodes might drown him? Haha. If that actually happens, Rhodes would be saving countless clueless girls. Of course, the idea of drowning Loke was just a joke. No one believed Rhodes would really go that far. At most, he'd rough him up a little. After all, hitting on someone else's girlfriend? Yeah, that deserves a lesson. A few sharp-eyed guild members did notice something odd. It seemed like Myra had briefly transformed and used hypnotic magic on Loke. But in the end, no one cared. Loke must have said something inappropriate again. If Myra knocked him out, then clearly it was his fault. Meanwhile, in the forest, Rhodes had already slung Loke over his shoulder and carried him all the way to Porly Uzuka's cabin. When the old healer saw Rhodes carrying someone like that, she assumed it was a real emergency and quickly let them in. Rhodes gently laid Loke on the bed. Porly Uzuka stepped forward, touching Loke's forehead with a glowing fingertip. After a moment, she said. He's just under a sleeping spell. Nothing serious. Rhodes scratched his cheek, a little embarrassed. That spell came from Myra. Porly Uzuka raised an eyebrow. You two brawling again? No. Rhodes waved his hands. It's just, Loke's been acting weird for over a month now. Every time we told him to get a checkup, he brushed it off. But his condition keeps getting worse. Today, he tried taking on a mission that could lead to a fight. We were really worried, so we brought him here like this. Porly Uzuka narrowed her eyes. Is that so? Fairy tale, those fools. She could already tell they were covering for something serious. She did a more thorough examination, and the longer it went on, the deeper her frown became. Rhodes could feel the pit growing in his stomach. He had only ever seen Granny make that face once before, when Makarov had collapsed during the Battle of Fairy Tale. "How bad is it?" he asked anxiously once she finished. Poorly Uzuka crossed her arms. "This won't be fixed overnight." She glanced down at Loke. "Leave him here. You can go." Rhodes didn't want to get in her way, but paused at the door. "Is there anything I can do to help?" "Cast that magic of yours. Once should be enough." "Sure thing." Outside, Rhodes summoned both the Scentile and Red Brambleback, giving them to Poorly Uzuka's care. "They'll follow your orders, Granny. Is your body holding up?" "Don't worry, I've been pacing myself." Rhodes smiled and waved. "I'll leave Loke to you." Even if the guy was a shameless flirt who kept too many secrets, he was still a friend, someone who had fought beside them. Rhodes didn't want to see him waste away like this. After Rhodes left, Poorly Uzuka retrieved a small vial from her shelf and let a single drop fall onto Loke's philtrum. A moment later, Loke sneezed and bolted upright, blinking groggily. "Huh? Where am I? I remember accepting a mission." "Poorly Uzuka?" She didn't mince words. You're not human, are you?" Loke's eyes widened. He opened his mouth as if to deny it, then hesitated. Realizing who he was talking to, he let out a long sigh. "Please don't tell anyone." Poorly Uzuka frowned. "What's going on with your body? Why are you getting weaker?" "Because." Loke looked down, shame in his voice. "I'm a celestial spirit. My true name is Leo the Lion. I've been stranded in the human world for the past 3 years. Without a contract." 3 years? Poorly Uzuka gasped, shocked despite her usual stern demeanor. A celestial spirit can't survive in the human world that long without consequences. Even the zodiac celestial spirits can't last more than 10 days in the human world without a contract. Poorly Uzuka snapped, her expression darkening. 3 years? That's impossible. How could you endure it, and why would you do such a thing? Loke lowered his gaze. Because I was exiled. I broke a taboo of the celestial spirit world. I caused the death of my own contractor. His voice trembled slightly, as memories long buried rose to the surface. It happened 3 years ago. My key was owned by a celestial spirit mage named Karen Lilac of Blue Pegasus. Poorly Uzuka's brow furrowed. At the time, she was quite famous. Not only did she hold my key, Leo of the Lion, but she also possessed Ares, another zodiac spirit. In fact, Loke added with a distant look. Holding 2 zodiac keys at once was considered something to be proud of. She was even a cover model for Sorcerer Weekly. Myra and Jenny. They were all her juniors back then. But fame. That's all she cared about. She never understood the heart of celestial spirit magic. Loke continued bitterly. To her, spirits were nothing more than tools, servants she could order around. Sometimes even less than that. Poorly Uzuka listened, frowning deeper with every word. When she was displeased with us, she'd use the whip. Punish us like animals. His voice dropped. Especially Ares. One day, I couldn't take it anymore. When she tried to summon Ares to punish her again, I forced the summoning to redirect. I answered the call in Ares' place. I ignored her dismissal spell. I refused to return. And by doing that, I locked her summoning slot. Since she couldn't summon 2 spirits at once, she was left powerless. I made her an offer. He said. Release both Ares and me from our contracts. That was all I asked. But the truth is, what I really wanted was for her to understand. I wanted her to recognize Ares' pain. To see us as companions, not tools. But Karen never believed she'd done anything wrong. And so, the standoff lasted for 3 long months. She refused to give in. And one day, she took on a job, despite being unable to summon any spirits. She never came back. Loke fell silent. The weight of that day was still heavy on his shoulders. Poorly Uzuka's expression was unreadable. In the eyes of the celestial spirit world, Loke said softly. My actions defied the will of my key-bearer. I interfered. Disobeyed. And worst of all, it led to her death. It didn't matter that I was trying to protect someone else. I broke the contract. The Spirit King passed judgment. I was exiled from the celestial spirit world, permanently. Poorly Uzuka's lips tightened. For a celestial spirit. Loke said. That's no different from a death sentence. He placed a hand on his chest. Our bodies aren't made to endure the human world for long without a contract. Little by little. I've been fading away. Loke was still burdened with guilt over Karen's death. He had long accepted the punishment as a form of atonement, and thus never once subjected to the verdict handed down. The laws of the celestial spirit world were absolute, even Ares' tearful pleas on his behalf had fallen on deaf ears. During his years of exile in the human world, Loke had made a name for himself as a flirt and a smooth-talking ladies' man. He immersed himself in missions that involved protecting women, seemingly out of chivalry. But in truth, he had been mimicking Karen and her companion's lifestyle, trying to escape the weight of his own regret. Over time, it became second nature. What kind of messed up rule is that? Poorly Uzuka muttered with disdain. Since when did protecting a companion from abuse become a crime? She was, after all, Fairy Tail's trusted healer. Just from that single line, it was clear she fit right in with the guild's ideals. Loke shook his head slightly. No, this was my mistake. The consequences are mine to bear. Poorly Uzuka looked like she wanted to argue, but held her tongue. After a brief silence, she said. Your friends clearly don't agree. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. Given how well she knew the brats in Fairy Tail, she figured they'd storm the spirit world itself if it meant helping a friend. Please, don't tell them. Loke said quietly. The Celestial Spirit King's judgment is final. It's not worth triggering a war over someone like me. A sinner. Even if Poorly Uzuka didn't say anything, someone was bound to find out. She pointed at the shimmering red and blue auras floating faintly around him. And what about that? Is it really useless? Rhodes's magic? Loke gave a faint smile. So that's who knocked him out earlier. It won't help. This isn't about injuries or magic depletion. It's a sentence imposed by the astral realm's laws. He placed a hand on his chest. I don't have much time left. Please. Let me spend what I have doing what I can. Chapter 381, Loke's girlfriend's Rhodes didn't expect to see Loke again so soon. He thought that he would be resting for at least a few days. But the very next morning, there he was, standing at the guild's front desk. Loke looked noticeably better than the day before and was asking the receptionist. Is that mission still available? Rhodes stepped forward. Yeah, it's still open. But are you really okay? Poorly Uzuka prescribed some medicine. Loke replied, smiling a bit sheepishly. As long as I take it on time, I should be fine. It sounds like the treatment might take a while though, so I'd better work hard to pay for it. Behind them, Master Mikrov waved his hand toward Rhodes. Let him go. Rhodes nodded. All right. Myra approached with an apologetic look. Loke. About what happened yesterday. It's fine. Loke replied brightly. I'm sorry for making you worry. From now on, I'll cooperate with the treatment. Rhodes handed him the mission sheet but hesitated. Want to team up for this one? Loke chuckled and raised the paper confidently. Next time. Let me show off a little today. He turned and walked away, his stride light. Rhodes glanced toward the master. Mikrov merely shook his head. It's all right. He knows what he's doing. He seemed calm. Until Rza and her team walked up. Master. Rza said firmly. We're taking this mission. No. Mikrov blurted out instinctively. Then, realizing he had no real reason to deny it, he muttered. What mission is it? Rza passed him the sheet. A band of thieves has been troubling Impatien's village. Mikrov frowned. A subjugation mission. Myra glanced over and smiled. Looks routine enough, Master. With a sigh, Mikrov relented and gave them the green light. After all, there hadn't been any complaints since that theater incident. Rhodes remembered that too. Didn't you guys just rake in a bunch of money from your last job? Rza answered matter-of-factly. My rent's expensive. And I want to buy something. Fair enough. She did rent 5 rooms on her own, and she was known for collecting rare, high-end weapons, armor, and even fancy clothes. Don't worry, Master. Rhodes added. The thieves' hideout is far from the village. You don't need to worry about collateral damage. Bad news, the strongest team was leaving town again. Good news, at least they weren't blowing up anything nearby. The village was actually a well-known tourist spot, especially famous for its hot spring resort. Rhodes made a mental note to visit someday. Oh, by the way. Rhodes added. Loke's headed to a location close to yours. If you hurry, you might even catch the same train. Oh? Then let's get moving. Said Gray. He'd been quietly concerned about Loke's condition lately. I don't want to ride the train. Natsu groaned, suddenly remembering his motion sickness. Rhodes, let me borrow a giant crab. Quit whining. Gray grabbed Natsu's arm and dragged him along. Then, looking at Ursa, he quickly added. We're teammates, so we should move together. Car sickness is just something you deal with. Ursa nodded in approval. Don't worry, Natsu. If you can't endure it, I'll help. No. Lucy and Happy followed behind, wearing the same tired but sympathetic smile. 2 days passed with no word from Fairy Tail's strongest team. Mikrov, clearly nervous, left to attend the regular guild masters meeting, quietly praying that nothing had gone terribly wrong. Ironically, it was just after he departed that the group finally returned. Ursa calmly submitted the mission report, stating that everything had gone smoothly. Lucy, looking downcast, ordered lunch and sat quietly at the bar, zoning out as if lost in thought. Natsu and Gray, meanwhile, were in bad shape. Bruised, bandaged, and covered in scratches. They looked like they'd barely survived a battlefield, not a simple subjugation job. Rhodes blinked and pointed at the two battered boys. "Are you sure things went smoothly?" "Huh? Oh, them." Mirza replied casually, brushing off the question with a wave. "They got like that during a pillow fight. Anyway, I'm off to do some shopping." Rhodes paused. Injured during a pillow fight? Then he remembered the time Myra had thrown a pillow at him. Yeah, okay, maybe that actually was normal. "You jerk, you still won't admit defeat?" "What are you talking about? You clearly lost." The two wounded warriors started bickering like toddlers until they suddenly turned in unison toward Lucy. "Lucy. Tell him I won, right?" "Shut up." Lucy's voice was cold, her eyes unusually sharp. "Why yes ma'am." They both flinched, visibly shaken. The infamous daredevils were stunned into silence by Lucy's uncharacteristically terrifying glare. She sighed deeply. Her mind was clouded with worry about Locke. During their mission, they'd run into him by chance, and he'd suddenly said something strange, something about not having much time left. He'd quickly laughed it off as a joke, but the uneasy feeling lingered. There was something about Locke lately that felt off. "Rhodes, Myra." Lucy turned to the pair. "Do you know what illness Locke has? I heard you took him to poorly Uzuka a few days ago." "I'm not sure," Rhodes replied, shaking his head. "Granny wouldn't tell me. Just said it's not something that can be healed in a day or two." Myra tilted her head. "Why do you ask? Did something happen?" "I saw him yesterday." Lucy's brows furrowed. "Maybe I'm just overthinking it." Before they could discuss it further, the guild doors burst open. A group of girls stormed inside, dozens of them, all types and all stunning in their own way. The guild went silent as they loudly called out in unison, "Where's Locke?" Some were strangers, others familiar, but they all had the same goal: find Fairy Tale's resident playboy. The moment that crowd of beautiful girls entered the guild, nearly every man in the tavern turned their heads. But when they heard who the girls were looking for, most of them silently cursed Locke in their hearts. So this is what they mean by some die of thirst, others drown in excess. The girls shoved and pushed their way to the bar counter, shouting over each other, "Is Locke here? Where is he? Has he been around lately? Why did he break up with me? He dumped me too. I'm not letting him off that easily." Rhodes tried to step in and speak, but the wall of high-pitched voices gave him a headache before he could even get a word out. Some of the girls were already sobbing while talking, clutching handkerchiefs and glaring around like they were ready to start a riot. With no other choice, Rhodes quickly stepped in front of Myra, shielding her with his body like a bodyguard in a celebrity scandal. Not that it helped. These girls weren't trying to hurt Myra, they were just overwhelmingly emotional. Even Myra was helpless in the face of this many heartbroken women. She recognized some of them as girls from nearby towns, ordinary civilians, not mages. From the sound of it, Locke had ended all his relationships in one go. Myra didn't really understand the pain of heartbreak firsthand, but she could at least imagine how hard it must feel. Still, she had no idea how to comfort them. Should she just hand Locke over to be torn to pieces? With no better ideas, Myra turned to the only person who might know more. "Lucy, do you know where Locke went?" "Huh?" Lucy, caught off guard, suddenly found herself in the middle of a very aggressive circle of women. "Who are you? Are you Locke's true love? Wait, did he dump all of us just for this girl? She's kind of cute when you look closely." "Well, I don't want to admit it, but she is cute." Myra just gave her a faint, unbothered smile, as if to say you got this. Wait. Miss Myra, don't just toss this problem on me," Lucy shouted as she turned and ran for her life. Chapter 382, Spirit King. The sheer power of this army of heartbroken girls was so overwhelming that even the guild's cunning tactician and the demon herself, Mara Jane, were rendered completely helpless. Honestly, if they'd caused even a bit more trouble, broken some glasses, flipped a table, maybe thrown a punch, Rhodes would have stepped in without hesitation and shown them the door. But they didn't. They didn't lash out or break anything. They just cried, pleaded for Locke's whereabouts, argued over who his true love was, or quietly lamented their broken hearts. Rhodes could only sigh in defeat. Locke. This guy really is a menace. A few of the girls instantly shot him glares. "Don't insult him." All right, my bad." Rhodes raised his hands, surrendering. These were victims of heartbreak, he had no intention of kicking them while they were down. That said, these girls were so emotional they could barely be handled by Worm, the snuggly bug companion he usually deployed for comfort. Maybe Worm's cuteness is fading as he gets older. Eventually, once they were sure Locke truly wasn't in the guild and no one had a clue where he'd gone, The crowd finally dispersed, leaving the guild in a welcome silence. As the tavern began returning to normal, murmurs floated around about how much trouble Loke had stirred up. Rhodes let out another sigh, but now that the chaos was over, he had the mental space to worry about what truly mattered. Loke's sudden decision to leave. It has to mean something's wrong. Polly Uzuka's statement about prescribing medicine might have just been to calm everyone down. And if she hadn't found a solution after examining him, then Loke might not have much time left. Rhodes recalled the day he brought Loke to her. The red and blue buffs had stayed at the treehouse for hours afterward, but Loke never showed up again. It likely hadn't helped at all. His frown deepened. What should I do? Kidnap him and drag him to Wendy for healing? Before he could think further, another commotion hit. A mail carrier walked in with a fresh delivery. A letter for Master Mikarov. The master's out, Myra said, stepping forward out of habit. I'll take it. She'd long been entrusted with the guild's incoming letters. Bills, complaints, reprimands, and the occasional bizarre love note. Mikarov trusted her completely to screen and sort them. So she took this one too, but paused when she read the name on the envelope. It's from Loke. Rhodes's stomach twisted. Why would he send a letter to the master? Myra didn't answer. She tore the envelope open and pulled out a folded piece of paper. As she did, a small glowing projection flickered to life above it. It was Loke. Calm, collected, and smiling faintly. The projection began to speak. Master, by the time you're reading this, I've probably already left Magnolia. These past few years at Fairy Tale have been some of the happiest of my life. Thank you. For everything. Hey. What's with these goodbye-sounding lines? Gray immediately left Nazi behind and ran up to the projection, drawing a small crowd of worried guildmates. But of course, the projection was just a recording. It couldn't answer. It continued, to all my guildmates. Thank you for putting up with me. Knowing all of you has truly been my greatest luck. If I had my way, I'd stay by your side forever. Natsu clenched his fists, anger flashing in his eyes. What the hell are you saying, Loke? Quiet, Natsu. Gray snapped. Just listen. The message went on, Loke's voice softer now, with guilt beneath the calm, but I'm a sinner. I made a mistake I can never take back. And it's time I face the consequences. Whether I disappear without a word or leave a message like this, I know you would still worry about me. That's why I've decided to leave Fairy Tale. At that, his projection faltered slightly, as if the words themselves were hard to say. He pushed his glasses up, lowered his gaze, and continued. From this moment on, I am no longer a member of Fairy Tale. So please, don't try to find me. I have somewhere I must go. Goodbye. No, farewell, forever. That's all. With those final words, Loke's projection vanished. For a moment, the entire guild stood in stunned silence, then chaos erupted. What the hell was that? No way I'm accepting this. Before anyone could stop them, Natsu and Gray shoved their way through the crowd and bolted for the door. That guy. After causing all this mess, he thinks he can just walk away? I'm dragging him back myself. Damn it, our fight's not over yet, Loke. You better not run off. A storm of angry voices and stomping footsteps followed as half the guild rushed out in pursuit. Rhodes snapped into action. Warren. Right here. Can you locate Loke? Warren placed his index and middle fingers to his forehead, eyes narrowing as he reached out with his telepathy. No. I can't sense him anywhere. That could only mean one thing, Loke had already left Magnolia. Rhodes wasted no time. He summoned a pair of merc wolves and released them to trace Loke's scent. Then he turned to Warren and Myra, handing them the reins of his scuttle crab. Search the roads outside the city. I'll check with Polly Uzuka. She might know more than she let on earlier. The place Loke had chosen for his final farewell was solemn and beautiful, a cliff surrounded by cascading waterfalls on three sides. It overlooked the tomb of Karen Lilica, his former contractor. The location sat in the outskirts of the city where Blue Pegasus was headquartered, not far from Fairy Tale's territory, but far enough to avoid any interference. By the time Rhodes learned the full truth from Polly Uzuka and hurried over, he discovered that Lucy had already acted. Having uncovered everything herself, Lucy had raced ahead. Now, she was standing atop the cliff, using every ounce of her magic power to force open the celestial gate and return Loke to the celestial spirit world. Rhodes arrived just in time to see the sky warp. A black vortex spiraled open above the cliff, darkening the day into night. Stars shimmered into view across the heavens, and from within that cosmic darkness descended a massive figure cloaked in celestial light. A giant. He hung suspended in the air, surrounded by constellations, like a god made of stardust. Compared to him, the two figures standing on the cliff were barely larger than his fingertips. And his magic power, it was overwhelming. More intense, more ancient, more suffocating than anything Rhodes had ever felt. Not even Makarova, his angriest, had radiated this kind of presence. Rhodes stared up, stunned. Who? Or what? Is that? The Celestial Spirit King. Loke's voice trembled with reverence. Why? Why have you come in person? The Celestial Spirit King's voice echoed through the sky, deep and unwavering. According to the covenant between our worlds, a celestial spirit must never harm the bearer of their key. Even Leo, though his actions were indirect, broke this fundamental law. It is an unforgivable sin. This law cannot be changed. Lucy, standing defiantly between the king and Loke, shouted with all her heart, he's already paid the price. 3 whole years. He suffered in silence, not for himself, but for Ares, for his friends. How can you still call this a crime? The Celestial Spirit King sighed. I, too, feel sorrow for. Lucy cut him off sharply. Her eyes burned with tears. Listen, you bearded old man, yes, you. You know what happened with Karen was an accident. You know Loke did the right thing. He protected Ares when no one else would. That wasn't a crime, it was compassion. The sky seemed to tremble from the force of her words. Down below, more members of Fairy Tale had arrived. One by one, they looked up in awe and unease at the immense, starlit figure looming overhead. Even the rowdiest of guildmates fell silent. None dared take a step forward. This was power beyond even Makarov, beyond any 10 wizard saint. The Celestial Spirit King was in a league of his own. And yet, on the cliff's edge, a lone girl stood unwavering before him. Just let me disappear already. Loke's voice cracked as he fell to one knee, his strength fading. Please, Lucy. I deserve this. You don't. Lucy turned to him, eyes blazing. Thinking of your friends, fighting to protect them, that's not a sin. You're not a criminal. You're a hero. With a cry, she raised her arm, and unleashed the last of her magic power. Open, the gates of the Celestial Spirit Zodiac. One by one, the spirits appeared behind her, Aquarius, fierce and proud. Taurus, muscles flexed. Sagittarius, silent with bow drawn. Virgo, kneeling in loyalty. Cancer, scissors gleaming. They said nothing, but their presence made everything clear. They stood with Lucy. And they stood for Loke. The summoning lasted only a moment. Lucy's body couldn't handle the strain. She collapsed forward. Lucy. Natsu was the first to react, darting forward and catching her before she hit the ground. Gray arrived a heartbeat later, stepping in front of Loke protectively, hands raised with forming eyes. Don't do anything stupid. Loke forced himself to his feet. His voice was hoarse. You guys. You don't understand. If you anger him. Blue light flared across the cliffside. Rhodes, Myra, Urza, and others arrived next, surrounding Lucy and Loke in a protective circle. No one needed to say a word. Their message was clear. He is one of us. Loke's eyes trembled. Natsu. Everyone. Lucy forced a weak smile from Natsu's arms. Honestly. This guild. Chapter 383, maybe I've been scolded to such an extent. Maybe it's the law that's wrong. The Celestial Spirit King looked at Lucy, then at Natsu holding her protectively, Gray standing guard, and the Fairy Tale members surrounding them. Leo, who broke the rules to protect Ares. His dear friend who risked everything to save him. And all of you, bound together by such a powerful bond. The Celestial Spirit King paused, then unexpectedly grinned. For the sake of that beautiful bond, I'll make an exception. Leo, I pardon your transgression. You are permitted to return to the Celestial Spirit Realm. You should thank the stars for guiding you. Your Majesty. Loke's voice trembled. If you still wish to atone, then I command this. Live on. With the strength of your friends, protect them even at the cost of your life. With a flourish of his cloak, the Celestial Spirit King dissolved into a swirling river of stars and faded into the sky. The darkness lifted. Daylight returned. Cheers erupted on the cliff. Natsu grinned. Wasn't that perfect? I really thought that old bearded guy was going to throw hands. Lucy, still in his arms, chuckled faintly. Yeah, he's the king of the celestial spirits, but he really is an old bearded man. Happy popped up. They're having an affair. Huh? Lucy jolted and immediately broke free from Natsu. Loke gave a tearful smile. Thank you, Lucy, and everyone. Gray clapped a hand on his shoulder. All right, get your health in order first. I've still got a bone to pick with you. Thank you. Loke's form shimmered as he prepared to return to the spirit realm. A gentle starlight flowed into a golden key, which floated into Lucy's hand. Please continue guiding me from now on. Loke said, bowing his head. Lucy looked exhausted, but joy radiated from her expression. Only if you promise to guide me too. Myra tilted her head, holding her face with both hands. What's with that line? It sounds just like a wedding vow. They're having an affair. Happy echoed with a chirp. No, we're not. Lucy shouted, face flushed. The crowd immediately piled on. Loke, you scoundrel. You went after Lucy too? Let's beat him up again. I said no. Lucy's voice boomed louder than all of them combined. Then, unexpectedly, getting married? Ursa, who had remained composed all this time, suddenly blushed crimson. Ursa, snap out of it. Someone cried. The laughter and chaos were loud and comforting. Lucy found herself laughing too. In this guild, you never had to feel alone. Perfectly resolved. Someone announced. Let's go home. Another shouted. And so, the guildmates began the return trek, rallying around their hero Lucy. Along the way, they chatted excitedly. I can't believe Luke's a celestial spirit. I knew something was up with him. That old man in the stars was crazy strong. In the midst of the crowd, a few suspicious types snuck off. Myra noticed them but didn't follow right away. She looked around, expecting to gossip about her discovery, only to realize Rhodes wasn't beside her. He was at the back of the group, riding his summoned scuttle crab, legs crossed and posture distant. Myra quickly caught up and blocked the crab's path. It stopped politely, lowering its claws so she could hop on. Myra sat beside him, waving a hand in front of his face. What are you spacing out for? Planning a secret trip to Blue Pegasus? Me? Come on. Rhodes leaned back against her with a sigh, gazing up at the sky. Normally, he'd come up with something witty or smug. But this time, he simply murmured. I just feel a little unnecessary right now. Whether it was the lullaby incident or the guild attack. Although he had been involved in everything, Rhodes couldn't shake the feeling that things might have resolved more smoothly without him. In fact, ever since he showed up, it felt like more unpredictable variables had entered the mix. Take this latest situation for example. If he had found Loke first, knocked him out, and dragged him to Kate's shelter, Loke might not have made it there alive. The same thing happened with the incident involving Grimoire Earhart. Without him, Elfman might have untangled his inner struggle a little later, but perhaps he would have never been in danger to begin with. Looking back, Rhodes had always been quietly proud of how much stronger he'd gotten, of the new titles he earned, of the progress he'd made with Myra. But today, realizing how close they came to missing the window to save Loke, felt like a bucket of cold water had been poured over his head. If he came across another situation that looked like a major plot event, would he still throw himself into it so easily? Myra patted the crab's back and told it to slow down. Then, adjusting her seat, she pulled Rhodes' head into her lap and gently massaged his scalp with both hands. You always overthink things. If you were more simple-minded, like the others, you'd have a much easier time. Loke almost died because of me. I have to take that seriously. Rhodes murmured as he turned over and wrapped his arms around her waist, burying his face into her lap. You're seriously upset about that? Myra gave his head a light pat. Did it ever cross your mind that if you hadn't shown up, without the blue buff or the red buff, Lucy might have collapsed from summoning all those celestial spirits? I don't think it would have gone that far. And if you hadn't fought in the battle against Phantom Lord, what if one of us had actually been killed by Jose? The master probably could have beaten him. Then what kind of pain do you think I would have gone through if you weren't there? Rhodes' arms tightened around her, and he didn't answer. Myra answered for him. You were probably thinking, maybe she'd be okay. Maybe she'd get through it. Right? She tapped him lightly on the head. You always think of the worst-case scenario as something that might not happen. Like, maybe someone wouldn't really be cursed to death by lullaby. Maybe the Phantom Lord's giant wouldn't end up hurting anyone near the guild. Maybe if you hadn't brought Elfman along, that village wouldn't have even a single ember left. She paused for a moment, her voice softening. Maybe. I wouldn't be who I am without you. You're already an irreplaceable part of this guild, the one everyone trusts and depends on the most. And to me, you're more than that. You're the most important person in my life. I don't want to hear another maybe from you. Thanks to Myra's request, the crab wasn't very swift anymore. It strolled leisurely behind the rest of the guild members. Of course, it didn't take long before someone realized two important people were missing from the group. Hey! You two snuck off with the big crab. I want a ride too. Natsu turned around and started to bolt. Gray immediately grabbed Natsu by his scarf, holding him in place as he ran in place like a wind-up toy. Let go! Natsu shouted. Even if I don't know what they're talking about back there, I'm telling you now. Don't mess with them. Gray replied. That's right, Natsu. Lucy chimed in with a dreamy look on her face. Rhodes and Myra might be whispering sweet nothings and doing something romantic. Natsu gave her a blank look. So what? I just wanted to borrow Rhodes' crab. Lucy threw up her hands. Natsu, you're completely hopeless. Then lend me yours. You can't ride Cancer. Chapter 384, Wizard Privacy Act. Due to the sudden onset of darkness, chaos briefly rippled through Magnolia and the surrounding towns. Most residents assumed it was a rare solar eclipse. They pulled out stools, put on sunglasses, and waited patiently for the sun to reappear. Instead, what they got was an unexpected dawn. No one knew what had really happened. But the moment they saw fairy tale mages returning in groups, the townspeople collectively gave up trying to make sense of it. After all, when something bizarre happens without warning and fairy tale members are nearby, it's probably safe to chalk it up to their doing. It wasn't exactly fair to always blame the guild, but explaining the truth was even harder, because, well, this time it really was their fault. Rhodes asked Myra to head back to the guild first while he made a round through town to check if the event had caused any serious damage. Thankfully, the Celestial Spirit King had not blanketed the world in pitch black. Instead, he left a gentle starlight shimmering across the sky, which meant no accidents had occurred among the townsfolk. While walking through the streets and chatting with a few locals, Rhodes overheard two amusing stories. One was that someone had successfully proposed under the sudden starlit sky. The other was that a couple, having sworn their love to the heavens, promptly broke up afterward. Rhodes gave a satisfied nod. He decided to share the tale of the successful confession with Jet, Droy, and Alzik once he returned. When Makarov returned to the guild, he was greeted by a surprising update. One of his own guild members was actually a celestial spirit and had returned to the celestial spirit realm. What? Loke? Leo the lion? Are you kidding me? I thought you already knew. Rhodes replied, recalling how the master had nonchalantly approved Loke's job request just a few days ago. Didn't Master Bob tell you? Or maybe poorly Uzika? Rhodes added. Since Loke's previous summoner had been the poster girl of Blue Pegasus, Master Bob had known the truth about his identity. And Bob, being close friends with Makarov, surely had the chance to say something. Rhodes had assumed the master already knew when he let Loke join Fairy Tail. But judging from the current reaction, it seemed like Makarov, just like Rhodes, didn't usually ask too many questions about where Fairy Tail strays came from. I haven't checked in with poorly Uzak lately, Makarov admitted, scratching his head with some guilt. And Bob never mentioned anything. Maybe because of that confidentiality rule. He was referring to the Wizard Privacy Act, which protects a mage's personal information. Without the individual's consent, details like magical lineage or background can't be disclosed. Of course, for members of dark guilds like Heisenwald, the rules were different. Digging up personal info on someone like Jose wasn't just legal, it came with a reward. Myra chimed in. So what should we do about Loke's guild status? What do you mean? Myra explained. He's Lucy's celestial spirit now. But before that, he handed in a resignation letter. Does that still make him a member of the guild? Makarov waved it off with a smile. Leo is Leo, and Loke is Loke. I never signed off on any resignation, and no one erased his guild mark. So of course, he's still one of us. Isn't it nice? He added. Having a celestial spirit as a guild member? Rhodes nodded, understanding the implication. It was like saying, the resignation of Mr. Hyde has nothing to do with Dr. Jekyll. As they spoke, more members started arriving at the guild, some cheerfully picking new missions to head out on. The final touches on the top floor's decorations were nearly complete, and at this point, no additional help was needed. Lucy and Loke arrived at the guild together. After exchanging a few friendly greetings, they made their way over to the counter. Master, Myra, Rhodes. Lucy greeted them with a warm smile, her mood clearly cheerful today. Loke also looked visibly better, his usual sparkle had returned. Myra clasped her hands together beside her face, eyes shining mischievously. Oh my, Lucy came in with Loke? Could it be the two of you are? Rhodes, sounding just a little stiff, added. Are you two having an affair? Lucy immediately shot him a glare. Mr. Rhodes, you haven't learned anything from Happy's tongue-in-cheek antics, and don't you two show up together every single day? Rhodes casually slung an arm over Myra's shoulders. So, are you saying your relationship with Loke is the same as mine with Myra? Huh? Yes, exactly. Loke grinned, sweeping Lucy into a dramatic bridal carry. From now on, I'll be like your gallant prince. Bravely charging into danger when you're in trouble, and of course, declaring my love at the perfect moment. I don't need any of that. Lucy flailed in his arms, kicking and protesting. Put me down already. What are you even doing? Myra and Rhodes both wore amused smiles, while Master Makarov simply observed them with no intention of stepping in. Loke continued to shower Lucy with sweet, over-the-top declarations, but Lucy clearly couldn't handle it and pretended not to hear a word. Rhodes even considered pulling out a notebook to take notes. After the comedic chaos finally settled down, Loke got to the real reason they came. Master, I actually came to talk about something serious today. I've already heard from Rhodes. Makarov said, nodding knowingly. I truly apologize for keeping my identity hidden. There's no need for that. Makarov replied with a gentle smile. To us, Loke is Loke. Whether you're a human or a celestial spirit, it doesn't change who you are to this guild. Even if you're now Lucy's celestial spirit, you can still remain a wizard of fairy tale. You're always welcome back here. Makarov said with a warm smile. Thank you, Master. Loke replied sincerely. He truly loved this guild. Reaching into his coat pocket, he pulled out a small palm-sized bottle. I came in a rush and only had time to bring a tiny bottle of Celestial Spirit World wine. I'd like you to try it. I'll gladly accept. Makarov grinned and reached out his hand, but was left hanging. The bottle had already been intercepted by Myra halfway. Myra? Makarov blinked. Master, your alcohol probation period hasn't ended yet. Myra reminded him with a gentle but unyielding smile. If I'm not mistaken, you already drank again during that last official council meeting. Should we extend the restriction by 3 more days? No. Not even 1 more day. Makarov looked longingly at the bottle. Fine, you hold on to it for now. Loke ignored the master's pitiful eyes and instead pulled out 2 glossy vacation tickets. Here, these are for you, a couple's vacation pass to the Arkansas View Hotel. Rhodes took them without hesitation. Whoa, you managed to snag these? These are rare and expensive. I was planning to use them with my girlfriends. Loke said casually. But since I can't stay in the human world much longer, I figured I'd pass them along. He gave a sly, knowing smile, the kind only Loke could wear. When it came to love-related things, he always had mysterious connections. Then he turned to Lucy and handed her 4 more tickets. Of course, Lucy gets 1 too. Please pass the others to Natsu, Gray, and Riza for me. Lucy's eyes lit up. Wow. We're going to the beach. Myra chuckled, teasing. Look at you, a rich girl, getting excited over a few vacation tickets. Lucy puffed her cheeks. That's because I haven't taken a single coin from home. Since becoming a wizard, the idea of vacation felt distant. Rhodes started counting on his fingers and stared at Loke in disbelief. 6 tickets? You seriously plan to take 5 girlfriends on a trip together? Of course. Loke replied smoothly, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. What's the issue? Rhodes blinked. Setting everything else aside, won't they fight each other? He remembered the time Loke took 3 girlfriends out to dinner at once. 5 just felt like overkill. Loke gave a sly wink. Wanna know the secret? A shadow passed over Rhodes as an ominous feeling crept in. I was just asking casually. He said quickly, putting his hands up innocently. Do I look like I have the guts to try something like that? Chapter 385, Seaside. Rhodes had long been bound to Myra, heart, soul, and future. No other woman could ever tempt him. Still, Rhodes didn't dare make any bold declarations to the heavens. Not here. In this land, the sky had a habit of darkening without warning whenever someone tempted fate. So, he quickly changed the subject. By the way, what about your girlfriends? If they can't find you, they might show up at the guild and cause a scene. I'll explain it to them later. Loke replied with a lazy smirk. He had just set Lucy down, only to immediately lean against her side again. How about I just say I've met a woman I truly want to protect for the rest of my life? Absolutely not. Lucy flailed, horrified. I don't want your fan club chasing me again. You can't stay long, just go. That's settled then. I'll rest up in the celestial spirit world and visit again once I've recovered. See you. With a wave, Loke vanished into a swirl of golden stardust, returning to the astral world. After staying in the human world for 3 years and nearly fading from overexertion, he really did need a break. Rhodes turned to Myra and offered the vacation voucher. Want to move our trip up a bit? Sure. Myra nodded with visible excitement. It's the middle of the month, and the renovations will be done in 2 days. We've earned a little getaway. You're all going? Lucy lit up with joy. I'm going to go grab Natsu. Then we'll head home and pack. Rhodes said as he looped Myra's arm through his. Master, we'll be off for a few days. Take care, kids. Makarov chuckled, waving them off from the bar. You've all been working so hard. Go and enjoy yourselves. With Rhodes, Myra, and Riza all going, he figured even if Natsu and Gray joined, there was little risk of a full-blown disaster. The guild would be fine with. Makarov raised a hand and began to count on his fingers. Rhodes, Myra, Riza. His brow furrowed. Cold sweat formed at his temples. Wait a second. Didn't Loke say Riza's going too? His eyes widened. The next moment, the old man toppled backward off the counter, shouting. No. Wait. I need to rethink this. There was no time to wait. Rhodes had already dashed home, packed the essentials, and picked Myra up so they could meet the others. Originally, the vacation was supposed to be just for the two of them, but now, with everyone joining, it was turning into a group trip. Still, Rhodes had only one lingering concern. I just hope Natsu doesn't cause a scene right when we're finally relaxing. Myra gave a confident smile. No worries. Isn't Riza going to? As if summoned by name, they ran into Riza just as they approached the station. By the time they met up, Riza was already dressed for the occasion, sporting a bright floral shirt, a wide-brimmed sun hat, and a swimming ring snugly wrapped around her waist. Behind her was the signature luggage cart she never failed to bring on trips. Stacked beneath the cart were several large suitcases, along with an odd assortment of items, blankets, parasols, folding chairs, and even beach shovels. You're a little too fired up, don't you think? Rhodes stepped in for Lucy to voice the collective thought. It takes hours just to get to the beach by train. Of course. A proper vacation deserves maximum preparation. Mirza declared, entirely serious. Isn't that right, Myra? Myra beamed, offering no objections. Mirza's right. I wonder if those three are packed and ready yet. Mirza clenched a fist in determination. This is an important matter. They'd better not drag their feet. Wait a second. Rhodes narrowed his eyes. Was that baiting them on purpose, Miss Demon Queen? Me? I don't know what you mean. Myra tilted her head, her smile angelic as her eyes curved playfully. Rhodes didn't press further. After all, if Natsu and Gray got tricked into showing up late and got smacked around by Mirza as punishment, well, that was on them. Myra was innocent. Technically. Originally, Natsu had tried to snag a ride on the crab again, but Mirza denied him on the spot. This is your punishment for being late, she said sternly. Also, you need more train experience. Maybe someday you'll stop getting motion sick. Happy wanted to protest, pointing out that their house was way outside Magnolia, so being late was totally normal. But since the punishment was only for Natsu and not him, he wisely kept quiet. Gray couldn't be bothered to defend Natsu, and Lucy took the opportunity to poke Natsu's sulking face for fun. Woo! Natsu groaned, curled up and defeated. With teasing, chatter, and mild chaos trailing behind them, the group finally arrived at their destination, Okan Beach. It was midsummer, peak tourist season, and the beach was buzzing with life. No wonder Rhodes couldn't buy any tickets earlier. The endless stretch of deep blue ocean kissed the horizon, blending so seamlessly with the sky that it was hard to tell where sea ended and heaven began. Waves shimmered under the sunlight, and beach umbrellas dotted the shoreline like colorful blossoms in bloom. Amidst the breathtaking scenery, the group walked toward the seaside hotel. With frequent backward glances at the gorgeous view, they stepped up to the front desk and exchanged their vacation vouchers for room keys. After entering his room, Rhodes finally let out a breath of relief. Thank goodness the 6 tickets weren't for a single king-sized room. If that had happened, he would have grabbed Lucy's key on the spot and dragged Leo out for a good beating. Luckily, there were 6 rooms in total. With Natsu, Happy, Gray, Ursa, and Lucy each claiming one, it left Rhodes naturally rooming with Myra. That was the plan, anyway. Until Myra promptly locked him out. If it had just been the two of them on a private getaway, sharing a room would have been fine. But with so many people around? Myra was far too shy to go through with that. And why on earth did Happy get his own room? That little furball was bound to have suspicious ideas. Rhodes had no choice but to return to his room alone. He changed into a floral patterned shirt, a pair of shorts, and some flip-flops. Stepping back out into the hallway, he realized it would have been faster to just use his requip magic instead of changing manually. Before long, Natsu burst out of his room in beach trunks, with Happy following excitedly behind. Gray, true to form, came out wearing nothing at all. Natsu cackled obnoxiously. Ha! You're naked again. Rhodes groaned and smacked a hand to his forehead. Here we go. But the moment Myra's door opened slightly, he reacted instantly. Kicking Gray squarely back into his room. Get dressed before coming out. Seriously. Myra stepped into the hallway in a dark blue swimsuit. The upper half was formed of 2 slim pieces of cloth held together by silver rings, barely containing the pressure it struggled to hold. It looked like it could give out at any moment. Her lower half wore a loosely tied wrap skirt that showed off her long, elegant legs with graceful confidence. As soon as she appeared, Rhodes forgot how to breathe. His gaze locked on her and refused to budge. Myra noticed, and seemed very pleased by it. She gave a slow, playful twirl, then leaned forward slightly, hands clasped behind her back, her lips curved in a teasing smile. Well? What do you think? What did he think? Rhodes wanted to say, please don't casually bust out your swimsuit modeling poses like that. Then again, part of him kind of wanted her to do it more often. Caught between those two reactions, he finally gave a helpless grin and said, You're so beautiful, I don't even know what words to use. From the side, Natsu folded his arms behind his head and tilted his head. Looks normal to me. Rhodes didn't even bother responding. Natsu understood nothing. Chapter 386, Rhodes is not that naive when it came to playing at the beach. There was one thing Rhodes definitely didn't look forward to, applying sunscreen. It was just asking for trouble. But when Myra lay on the beach mat, exposing her smooth, fair back, and tilted her head with a sweet smile to look at him, he simply couldn't say no. Make sure it's even. Myra said calmly. Of course. Rhodes replied, taking the bottle of sunscreen. Tie your hair up first. Before she could respond, he gently gathered her long silver hair and tied it into a ponytail using the small hairband he always wore on his wrist. He was getting frighteningly good at this kind of thing. After sweeping her ponytail forward over her shoulder, Rhodes squeezed a small amount of sunscreen onto his fingers and dotted Myra's neck with evenly spaced white blobs. Then, using smooth circular motions, he rubbed the lotion in thoroughly. Just as she asked. From her neck to her shoulders and down her back, he continued the process with precision. Occasionally, his fingers accidentally slipped in just the right way. Completely reasonable, of course. You've got pretty good hands, Rhodes, said Versa, who had suddenly laid down next to Myra on her own beach mat. Mind doing mine too? Rhodes couldn't see Myra's face. But he did notice the beach mat wrinkling ominously beneath her. He immediately declined. This'll take a while. Myra, why don't you go ask Natsu instead? Good idea. Versa said, nodding. Natsu, come here and help me apply sunscreen. Ugh, such a pain. Natsu grumbled as he walked over, clearly reluctant. Just follow what Rhodes did, Versa instructed. And I'll help you later. I'm not even afraid of the sun. Natsu muttered. Still, he watched Rhodes's movements and began imitating him. That's when Rhodes had a dangerous thought. If I do something a bit unusual, will Natsu copy that too? Myra, who still hadn't turned around, wrinkled her nose and warned him. Better not get any weird ideas. How'd you know? He asked, startled. Humphrey. Of course she knew. His hand pressure had changed the moment he got distracted. Meanwhile, Lucy stood nearby, holding her own bottle of sunscreen awkwardly. She had originally wanted to help Myra or resupply theirs. But clearly, that ship had sailed. So, should she ask Gray? No. No way. Asking a guy who stripped at random like it was second nature to help with sunscreen? That was out of the question. Just as Lucy began to fret, a small voice chimed in. Lucy, need our help? Asked Happy, fluttering up beside her. Lucy narrowed her eyes. That smirk says it all. I wasn't planning anything. Happy said, trying to sound innocent. No one's buying it. Deciding to handle it herself, Lucy pulled out a celestial spirit key. Open, Gate of the Maiden. Virgo. With a flash of golden light, Virgo appeared. Though not in her usual maid attire. She wore a black swimsuit trimmed with white lace, complete with a ruffled skirt. Princess. Virgo said, kneeling upright. Is this a beach training session? No. Lucy snapped. And why are you dressed like that? I heard from Brother Loke that you received a vacation voucher. Virgo explained. So I came prepared. For training. She remained perfectly still in her kneeling position. Shall we begin now, Princess? I told you, it's not training. I just wanted your help. Lucy groaned. Then she paused. Wait a minute, what was that about calling him brother? Lord Loke asked me to refer to him that way. Virgo replied, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Lucy sighed and held her forehead. That guy. But, well, this was just how celestial spirits were. They had their own quirks. She decided not to dwell on it. Anyway, please take care of it. Yes, Princess. Virgo got to work with her usual diligence. Meanwhile, behind a coconut tree not far away, Juvia peeked out while nervously wringing her hands. Dressed in a modest swimsuit, she whispered to herself. Gray-sama is all alone. This is the perfect opportunity, but... I didn't plan for today. Back on the beach, Gray stretched his arms and called out. You're taking too long. Happy and I are gonna start without you. He turned to the Exceed. Let's have a sandcastle building competition. Aye, sir. Happy shouted with sparkly eyes. Alright, Happy. The key to a proper sandcastle is shaping the sand just right. Aye. Gray worked quickly, his hands skillfully crafting a detailed sand structure. Meanwhile, Happy enthusiastically made a sand mound vaguely shaped like a fish. Then he threw his little arms up and said, I'm tired already. That was fast. Lucy said from her beach mat, watching them with mild amusement as Virgo continued to apply her sunscreen. You barely started. Happy looked deflated. Because no matter what I do, It never looks as good as Gray's. Gray, can't you cut him some slack? Lucy called out. Huh? Why? Gray replied seriously. This is a contest. A contest between men. Lucy blinked. Wait, how old is Happy again? Isn't he 6? Then she frowned and mumbled to herself. But in cat years that's actually pretty mature. But Happy's not exactly a regular cat either. Given Happy's behavior, he was basically a mischievous little kid. Come to think of it, so was Natsu. Don't give up, Happy. Natsu called out, having just finished haphazardly applying sunscreen to Ursa. He rushed over and squatted beside Happy. Let's show them what we've got. Together, they built something. It resembled a collapsed tower, or maybe a lumpy sandhill. Either way, it could barely qualify as a sandcastle. Lucy tilted her head. I mean, it looks more like a dragon's nest than a castle. Natsu grinned proudly. Exactly. See? Lucy knows what's up. Ugh, moving on. Gray ran straight into the ocean, kicking up a spray of seawater. Let's settle this with a water fight. Hey! Sneak attack, you jerk! Natsu shouted, charging in right after him. Happy, determined not to be left behind, grabbed his tiny swimming ring and waddled after them. Myra, her cheeks slightly flushed, gently pushed Rhodes. Alright, I'll take care of my face myself. You go have fun too. Rhodes raised an eyebrow and replied dryly. I'm not that childish. Before he could finish, a splash of water hit him square inches the face. His hair was soaked, and the front of his shirt clung to him, dripping. How the heck did they manage to splash that far? Natsu burst out laughing. Ahahaha. Rhodes got drenched. Myra giggled behind her hand, clearly amused by his soggy state. Rhodes wiped the water from his face and gave her a sly smile. Alright. I'll go take care of a little something. Okay, Myra replied sweetly. Die, Natsu. Rhodes roared as he charged into the water, arms spread wide. Hydro charge. You dare challenge me? Take this, Fire Dragon's water strike. Natsu shouted, slinging water at him. I'm in too, water machine gun. Gray added with unnecessary flair. Lucy's sweat dropped as she watched from the shore. Seriously? Rhodes has gone completely childish. And those names? Is there even a difference between any of those attacks? The trio kept shouting their over-the-top names, but in reality, it was just good old-fashioned water fighting. The only difference was how hard the splashes hit. Getting smacked in the face felt like being slapped. Whoa, blub blub. The first casualty was Happy, who got caught in the crossfire. He became their unintentional target dummy, sometimes even being launched out along with the waves. After a while of chaotic splashing, the three soaked troublemakers took a break to change into their swimming trunks. That's too much. Happy grumbled with a pitiful expression. I'm emotionally scarred. Rhodes, trying to cheer him up, summoned Warm and nudged him toward Happy. Go play with him for a bit. Warm, the round and fuzzy creature, plopped down on the beach and looked up at Rhodes, clearly annoyed. It was too hot. Way hotter than the guild. Didn't they agree Warm would only be summoned on cool summer days? Rhodes pulled out a large bill and waved it in the air. Wanna get some ice cream? Hulu. Warm lit up immediately, tail wiggling with joy. This glutton had no self-control. Food always won him over. Warm was now about the size of a pig. Rounder, in fact. Rhodes could easily ride him if he wanted. He was sturdy enough to carry both Happy and himself to grab some frozen treats. And just like that, Rhodes declared with a grin. Ice cream's on me today. Chapter 387, Trinity Raven. The boys dove straight into the fun, while the girls, after finishing their sunscreen routine, chose to relax under the sun with some ice cream before joining the games. Swimming, water fights, watermelon smashing, everything was on the schedule. But the most intense activity? Beach volleyball. The MVP of the boys' team was, unsurprisingly, Natsu. From the moment the game started, he was determined to win and treated it like a battle. Gray and Rhodes, however, were slightly distracted at first. It wasn't easy to decide whether to focus on the volleyball, or the players. But after warming up and adjusting to the view, they gradually got into the rhythm. You two are hopeless. Ahahaha. Natsu laughed loudly, showing no mercy. Rhodes and Gray chose to ignore him with synchronized deadpan expressions. The group played all day under the blazing sun, the beach echoing with their laughter and shouts. Only when they finally felt hungry did they retreat to the hotel for showers, dinner, and a bit of rest. But the fun didn't stop there. The hotel also had a hidden gem, a luxurious underground amusement park, complete with a casino. The gang decided to rest up in their rooms before heading out for one final adventure that evening. Inside Myra's room, the peaceful mood shifted slightly. What are you doing in here? Myra asked, surprised to find Rhodes sneaking in when she hadn't noticed. Rhodes grinned and wrapped his arms around her waist. Because it's rare for us to be alone. Myra leaned against him affectionately, her voice soft. But I was just about to take a nap. Then let's nap together. Rhodes offered casually. Myra raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Rhodes raised one hand like he was making a solemn vow. I promise not to try anything. He meant it. After all, it was broad daylight, and with this bunch of wild mages, someone could break in at any moment, either on purpose or by accident. Given how often walls got destroyed during friendly brawls in Fairy Tale, that wasn't paranoia, it was statistical inevitability. That was the downside of vacationing with guildmates, privacy was a luxury. Still, Rhodes thought it wasn't such a bad trade-off. Curling up with a soft, Myra-shaped pillow? Pretty great deal. Or so he thought. Moments after lying down, he discovered he'd underestimated the situation. Myra, now fast asleep, had completely latched onto him. Arms, legs, everything. If she had just a little more upper body strength, this would have counted as a full-on submission hold. And now the question was, what should a boyfriend do when his girlfriend falls asleep on top of him? Give her a big ol' slap on the face and, when she jolts awake, dramatically gasp. Did you have a nightmare? Yeah. Rhodes still had plans to live a long life. Instead, he stared quietly at her sleeping face, wondering if he could sneak a kiss without getting caught. Sure, he could kiss her anytime when she was awake, but stealing one while she was sleeping had a different kind of thrill. Myra slept like a stone. He poked her cheek, gently tugged at her fingers, even played with a lock of her silver hair, no response. Rhodes smugly decided it must be because she felt safe in his arms. Of course she slept well. He pulled her in a little closer, smiled to himself, and closed his eyes. When he woke up, Myra was wide awake, lying on her side next to him, her head propped on her hand and those brilliant blue eyes staring straight at him. Rhodes blinked and met her gaze. Does it look good? Myra paused thoughtfully, then smiled sweetly. Not really. Even though she said that, her eyes were fixed on him like a hawk. Typical, saying one thing, meaning another. Rhodes glanced away briefly, then back. What time is it? We overslept. Myra replied, sitting up at the edge of the bed and taking his hand. Mirza and the others have probably already gone out to explore. All right. Rhodes let her pull him up and with a snap of his fingers, instantly changed outfits using re-equip magic. Unfortunately, he was now so good at it that there was no chance for accidental comedic wardrobe fails. Myra, meanwhile, opened her suitcase and started rummaging through it for something to wear. Maybe I should learn re-equip magic too. She mused. I could teach you. Rhodes offered. But don't you already use transformation magic? Isn't that even more efficient? You can literally summon outfits you don't even own. Sure, but I have to keep feeding it magic constantly. It's not a lot, but still, it gets tiring. She looked over her shoulder with a teasing smile. I can't just conjure a fancy dress and expect you to give me the blue buff, now can I? Rhodes chuckled. Actually, that sounds amazing. A beautiful evening gown glowing with red and blue arcane light. You'd steal the spotlight the moment you walk in. That kind of thing? Leave it to Urza. She's the one who'd change into a ball gown just to visit the casino. Eventually, Myra pulled out a casual set of clothes and turned slightly. Turn around. No peeking. Rhodes obeyed without protest. In the past, she'd either throw him out of the room or lock herself in the bathroom. He tried glancing forward just in case there was a mirror in sight. But no luck. No reflections to sneak a peek. All done. When he turned around, Myra stood before him in a black short-sleeved shirt and light blue denim shorts, paired with sleek black-heeled sandals. Her silver hair flowed loosely as she attempted to tie it up, only to stop halfway. Help me? She asked, turning toward him and gently lifting her hair. Rhodes smiled warmly. Of course. But just as he stepped forward, everything around him was swallowed in sudden darkness. Pure black. He couldn't even see Myra, who had been just an arm's reach away. Goo-goo-ah. A strange bird-like screech rang out, followed by Myra's startled scream as she bolted into Rhodes' arms. The sudden force slammed into Rhodes, sending him crashing through the door behind him and tumbling into the hallway. As the darkness quickly lifted, the two of them stood back up, only to find themselves surrounded by three strange figures. Myra clutched her stomach with one hand, standing back to back with Rhodes. Before he could even ask, she said firmly. I'm fine. Be careful. Yeah. Now isn't the time for chatter. Rhodes narrowed his eyes, scanning the attackers and trying to recall where he had seen them before. The darkness and the silent strike just now. This was no random encounter. These people were clearly after them. The first was a woman in a decorative kimono, wielding a crimson katana. Her pink hair was styled into two elaborate side loops, resembling traditional courtly buns. Despite her graceful appearance, her cold gaze gave away her murderous intent. Next was a hulking man with a bare chest and an unusually thick neck. Like an owl's. Strapped to his back was a metallic thruster rig that pulsed with glowing energy. It looked like a makeshift rocket booster. The third figure stood out the most, a tall man with pitch black hair that dragged along the ground behind him. He wore dark makeup, including black lipstick, and cradled an electric guitar like a weapon. His outfit screamed death metal, like something out of a dark concert. Death's Head Caucus. Myra muttered, eyes narrowing. She had spotted the symbol on their outfits. They're from a dark guild. Rhodes nodded. Specifically, an assassination guild. And not just any, they're elite. A special guerrilla team known as Trinity Raven. These three were infamous. In the midst of a major war, they once single-handedly eliminated all enemy commanders with surgical precision. Their hands were stained with the blood of countless men. The guitarist strummed a chord with a sharp screech, the sound grating like claws on glass. He tossed his long hair back and sneered. As expected of fairy tale strategist. Got us figured out fast. The owlman made a bizarre cooing noise. Cuckoo. We are warriors of justice, sworn to purge evil. Myra gave him a skeptical look. Says the mercenary assassin. Don't talk about justice when you get paid to murder people. No need for pointless arguments. The pink-haired woman interjected. She stepped forward with elegant, fluttering strides, each step from her wooden sandals clicking ominously against the floor. She said with a theatrical bow. We've come under orders to pay the two of you a visit. I humbly ask for your guidance. Chapter 388, Summon and Survive. The hotel corridor was completely blocked, Vidaldis and Ikaruga at each end, while Fukuro waited in the room behind. Rose's room was right across from theirs, but Rhodes couldn't sense her magic. She was likely out. The others were probably already playing downstairs in the underground amusement hall. These opponents were no ordinary dark mages. Trinity Raven, an elite assassination unit of the Death's Head Caucus, was infamous even among assassins. Against them, this was not a mere skirmish, it was a battle for survival. Rhodes treated them as if facing three S-class threats. 2 versus 3, numerically outmatched. The corridor ceiling was barely over 3 meters tall. Summoning larger beasts or causing wide-scale destruction would risk damaging the building and potentially harming innocent guests. Fukuro. He was the one who had launched the surprise attack on Myra earlier. His jetpack suggested aerial mobility, possibly flight or burst charges, and the way he attacked in the dark hinted at some kind of dark vision or even dark magic. Vidaldis stood out with his wild, floor-length black hair and electric guitar. Likely a user of sound magic, maybe even hair magic, given how he seemed to control the thick strands like weapons. Ikaruga, poised and silent, wore a traditional kimono and held a red-hilted katana. As their leader, she was the most dangerous. A cold-blooded swordswoman known for slicing through even magical defenses. Rhodes calmly assessed the situation, then tried to gain more intel. Why would Death's Head Caucus's Trinity Raven target the two of us? Did someone actually put out a contract on us? The client said. Vidaldis rasped while strumming a distorted chord on his guitar. That demon girl and fairy tale strategist might be trouble. Get rid of them before they interfere. Ikaruga stepped forward gracefully, folding her hands into her sleeves. Eliminating you is simply the most elegant solution. She said, her voice as delicate as falling sakura petals. Sounds like someone's trying to cover up something big. If you tell us what your client's after, we might just walk away. Rhodes kept his tone casual, but subtly moved one hand behind his back to shield it from Fukuro's view. He began tracing letters gently against Myra's back, communicating silently. Ikaruga covered her mouth with her sleeve, chuckling softly like a court lady from an Eastern tale. Forgive me. A lady must keep her secrets. But rest assured. Your blood will bloom like cherry blossoms in the spring breeze. Rhodes raised an eyebrow. Is that a haiku or just a poor attempt at poetic murder? He didn't wait for an answer. The moment her sword shimmered with magical light, Rhodes and Myra activated their transformations, Mountain Dragon Soul and Satan Soul, respectively, and exploded into action. In the blink of an eye, they were in front of Fukuro, fists raised. Their coordination was seamless. One strike from the left, the other from the right. Their punches landed squarely on Fukuro's massive chest, each impact echoing with the sound of splintering bone. Their fists dug deep, nearly halfway into his body. There was a moment of stunned silence before Fukuro's body launched backward like a missile, tearing through the hotel's outer wall. He flew through the air and crashed hard onto the sandy beach below, leaving a long skid mark in the sand and spitting a jet of blood into the sky. Most of Fukuro's body was buried beneath the sand, while his upper torso was soaked in blood. An old strategist once said, It's better to take out a single threat completely than to fight 10 half-heartedly. Rhodes and Myra sprouted wings, stone and demonic, and launched into the sky like twin arrows fired from the same bowstring. They shot through the broken hotel wall, the hole Fukuro had left behind. Curtains fluttered belatedly, and the small furnishings scattered across the room, caught in the violent gusts. Just before their retreat, Ikaruga's katana gleamed in a lightning-fast draw. Her blade returned to its sheath with a whisper, the deadly flash barely visible to the eye. Videldus, slower to react, struck a harsh chord on his electric guitar. His thick black hair surged forward like living tentacles, trying to snare the two escapees by the ankle. But the wind from their wings repelled it just in time. Ikaruga's pink hair danced in the air as her wide sleeves rustled dramatically. If she had smiled, it would have made for an enchanting image. But her face twisted in annoyance. Clearly, she hadn't expected them to target the weakest link of the trio first and successfully break through the Trinity Raven's trap. Pursue. Her voice was cold and precise. She stepped lightly onto the windowsill and leapt into the open air. Videldus followed a second later, launching himself after her with his guitar slung over his back. But by the time they reached the street, Rhodes and Myra had already descended like comets, fists slamming down on Fukuro's head with crushing force. Boom. The massive assassin's neck twisted at a grotesque angle as his skull was driven deep into the sand, nearly vertical, like a tent peg hammered into the beach. The ground exploded with the impact. Sand erupted in a towering column, engulfing the three figures entirely. A shockwave rippled out from the point of collision, strong enough to roll the waves back. Tourists nearby were knocked off their feet as shrieks echoed along the shoreline. Once the tremor faded, bystanders scrambled to get away, crawling and stumbling in the sand. Many had noticed the strange shape crash onto the beach earlier and thought about getting a closer look, until now. No one needed to guess anymore. That was definitely a wizard battle. The only smart thing to do now was run for dear life. Thankfully, Ikaruga and Videldus had no interest in ordinary civilians. Even as panicked tourists ran right past them, they paid them no attention, stalking straight toward the epicenter of the blast. Above the shifting sand, Rhodes raised his hand. Summon, Blue Sentinel, Brambleback. With a flash of light, two towering elemental beasts appeared beside him, one a hulking azure golem pulsing with mana, the other a crimson beast with molten veins and burning claws. Rhodes' eyes lit up with power as the blue buff adorned his forehead. Myra, beside him, received the red buff, her aura burning with chaotic, demonic energy. Rhodes pointed at Fukuro, whose body remained twisted and unmoving in the sand. Engage. Fight until the job is done. These enemies were unlike any they had faced before. Cold-blooded killers, real assassins, with infamy that spread across the continent. They were the equivalent of red-named monsters in a quest board, dangerous targets you could eliminate on sight with no repercussions, and sometimes, even collect a bonus for doing so. With two of the three still standing, Rhodes did not have time to confirm whether Fukuro was truly out of the fight. In a battle where lives were on the line, he had no choice but to be ruthless. You're hurt. Myra's sharp eyes caught the thin trail of blood streaking down one of Rhodes' stone wings. Rhodes' expression hardened. That woman, she managed to get a cut in when I flew past. She's dangerous. Be careful. Myra nodded. She knew better than anyone how durable Rhodes' body was, especially after taking over the mountain dragon soul. If someone could bypass that defense and leave a wound, their attack power was no joke, possibly even rivaling her own Satan soul, Halfa's. Ikaruga and Videldus had initially considered regrouping to save Fukuro, but the sight of the hulking owl being pummeled into the sand by Blue Sentinel and Brambleback made them hesitate. After a beating like that, even if he survived, he would not be contributing to the next round. Rhodes clenched his fist. Summon. A flurry of glowing portals opened around him and Myra as a host of magical beasts burst forth. Some took to the skies with shrieks. Others burrowed into the sand or stayed nearby on standby. The beach became a wild zone of magical creatures, each one radiating battle-ready intent. They had been lucky to take down one enemy with a surprise ambush. But with these two, there would be no second chance. Caution was everything now. To avoid walking straight into any unknown instant kill magic, Rhodes decided to use his summons as both attackers and testers. Raptors. Gromps. He shouted. 2 large raptors and 10 smaller ones screeched overhead, their wing B8s slicing the air as they passed over Ikaruga and Videldus. A moment later, hundreds of crimson feathers rained down like daggers, sharp as steel and swift as a storm. Meanwhile, 2 massive gromps, swampy, bloated toads with war-paint-colored hides, bounced forward and spat twin jets of violet poison toward the enemies. In a true fight, the summons did not care about collateral damage. Pollution? Environmental hazards? Who had time to think about that when your life was on the line? Videldus strummed his guitar wildly, whipping his head back and forth as his long black hair writhed like sentient tentacles. In the shrill screech of metal cords, his hair extended outward in thick, snake-like coils, lashing and twisting to intercept the venom midair. It's useless. He laughed maniacally. My hair absorbs all liquids. Poison? Bring it on. The only things that hurt are oil and alcohol. Ikaruga, standing gracefully beside him, slid her katana from its sheath and danced into motion. Her movements were sharp and elegant, slicing through the air in whirling arcs. Each falling feather was split, not vertically or horizontally, but flat. Instant transmission clean down the middle, the feather knives fluttered to the ground in harmless ribbons of red. Chapter 389, The Little Wild Monster performs a great service with a single strike. The precision of Ikaruga's swordsmanship was unmistakable. This level of skill far surpassed simply slicing Lucy's clothes. Even Mirza might struggle against it. There is nothing I cannot cut. Ikaruga gently returned her katana to its sheath as countless crimson feathers drifted around her like falling petals. Had the background music been a traditional ensemble rather than Vidaldus's screeching electric guitar, the scene might have carried a strange elegance. Krugs, Brambleback, Blue Sentinel, Merc Wolves. Rhodes had no time to admire her theatrics. At his command, thorny vines burst from the sand, slithering across the beach like a nest of vipers. Before Vidaldus and Ikaruga could react, two Krugs erupted from the ground, clamping their rocky jaws around the enemy's lower backs. The vines rapidly climbed up their legs, binding them from the ankles to the thighs in an instant. Two blue floaters, pulsing with azure light, circled behind and fired concentrated mana beams at their backs. Four Merc Wolves, two from the flanks and two from the front, lunged for their throats with ghostly growls. But Ikaruga was a master of the blade. In a heartbeat, she unsheathed her katana and carved through every vine in sight, slicing them clean without effort. Her blade danced again, splitting both Krugs in half. Their remains dissolved back into the ground with low rumbles. Vidaldus, far from idle, let out a wild cackle and tore into his guitar strings with ferocity. His floor-length black hair twisted and writhed like a mass of snakes. It lashed out, snatching all four Merc Wolves midair and hurling them like cannonballs at the floaters behind him. The wolves were pierced by the lasers mid-flight, but their momentum was enough to slam into the floaters, shattering them on impact. So instead of direct sound attacks, you control your hair with music? Rhodes narrowed his eyes, analyzing the rhythm of the guitar and how it influenced the black coils. Just in case. Maybe I should block my ears with earth magic. While earplugs couldn't fully negate sound, they could dull it enough to disrupt sound-based enchantments. It worked on a similar principle as wearing protective goggles against visual illusion magic. It wasn't logical science. It was fairy tale magic logic. But there was a downside. Dulling one's own hearing also reduced awareness and reaction time. Against even slightly weaker foes, it could make the battle drag on painfully. I'll handle the sound magic. Myra stepped forward to shield Rhodes, lifting her arms. Take over, demon lullaby. A burst of magic enveloped her. Her casual clothes vanished, replaced by a coarse, earthen-colored robe. Mysterious purple and indigo sigil shimmered across her exposed shoulders. She stood barefoot on the beach, her face hidden behind a wooden mask of a three-eyed Unna spirit, its expression unsettlingly serene. Sleep now, rest well, dream beneath the rose-filled sheets. Myra's voice was a soft lullaby, laced with subtle magic. Her words floated forward like a drifting melody, brushing past the roaring surf and toward the enemy. Ikaruga's elegant poise faltered. A wave of drowsiness hit her like a gentle tide, her eyes growing heavy as if invisible weights tugged at her lashes. Ikaruga struggled against the creeping drowsiness, slicing through the descending razor feathers once more, but this time, her swings lacked their former precision. You understand music too? Vidaldus rasped, his voice only slightly less grating than the chaotic screeching from his guitar. Then come and enjoy it. This is a concert straight from hell. Death roll away. His fingers trembled with furious speed across the strings. Despite lacking any amplifier, the guitar shrieked out a deafening roar of sound that filled the entire beach. Hi-ah-ah-h-h. Vidaldus howled, head banging with wild abandon. His massive black hair twisted into a spinning cyclone atop his head. Let's go. Funky girl. If Myra's lullaby was the tender song of a loving mother, cradling a child to sleep, then Vidaldus's wail was like someone jamming a brass band into your ears and setting it on fire. The peaceful magic of Myra's lullaby was obliterated in an instant, drowned out by the madness. An explosion of rage and chaos followed. Like someone had kicked open the door to a nightclub inside a volcano. Even Ikaruga, who had been wavering under the effects of the lullaby, was now fully alert again. She calmly swatted away a pair of blue and purple floaters as they lunged at her. Yahaha. I like your style. Vidaldus cackled like a lunatic, his tongue lolling out as he slammed his fingers across the strings. You're my nightmare date for tonight. Let's rock. Rock nightmare. With that battle cry, a screeching wall of noise erupted from his guitar, so powerful that even the sand on the beach began to ripple. Rhodes couldn't let him finish the performance. Mountain dragons roar. Opening his mouth, Rhodes unleashed a storm of rocky breath, fragments of stone and crushing force blasting forward like a cyclone. Krugs erupted from underground without hesitation, hurling themselves at Vidaldus. One slammed into his side, the other bit down hard on his guitar. Two merc wolves darted out next, one flanking Ikaruga to cut off her escape, the other lunging to tear at the guitar from the other side. The raptors, unable to unleash their feather knives, became the blades themselves, dive-bombing from above like crimson comets. Even the gromps, those hulking, swamp-colored frogs, launched their bulky bodies like cannonballs, aiming straight at both Ikaruga and Vidaldus. The blue sentinel and brambleback, who had been pummeling the nearly unconscious Fukuro, now turned and charged at full force toward Vidaldus, ready to flatten him like a freight train. Every summoned creature had received the same top priority command: protect the boss lady. Yet even with that onslaught, sound traveled faster than teeth or claws. The cursed rhythm from Vidaldus's guitar reached Myra first. Two distinct streams of magical sound poured into her ears. She winced, groaning under the mental pressure. The third eye embedded in her forehead flashed brightly beneath the wooden mask. Then her face relaxed, and she steadied herself. It's mental magic, Myra warned calmly. Sound-based mind control. Be on guard. But her words came a moment too late. The music had already stopped. Faced with the barrage of savage attacks, Ikaruga couldn't fully shield Vidaldus this time. First, she unleashed a precise, arcing slash with her katana, cutting straight through Rhodes's mountain dragon's roar. The storm of rock and debris split into two distinct currents, howling past her sides and tearing twin trenches across the beach. Even the earth beneath the sand was exposed, while the fine grains from the island beneath their feet began to flow outward like a tide. 12 raptors dove from the sky like crimson missiles, but Ikaruga's blade danced faster than sight. She cleaved each one down with terrifying precision, feathers and blood scattering into the wind. She struck again, slicing through the pair of Krugs, but instead of disappearing, the shattered fragments morphed into swarms of miniature Krugs. These scuttled forward and latched onto Vidaldus's ankles and behind his knees, biting hard into muscle and tendons. One merc wolf lunged for Ikaruga, but she twisted, slashing through its neck in a blur. The wolf's body burst into magical particles before it even hit the ground. The other merc wolf attacked Vidaldus, one head sinking its fangs into his shoulder, the other clamping down on the neck of his guitar. He screamed, flailing as his hair surged out to bind the beast, but even that couldn't stop the growing cracks running along the guitar's frame. And then came the heavyweights. Two gromps dropped from above like giant poisonous meteors. Ikaruga and Vidaldus had no choice but to dodge aside, because right behind them, a stone golem's hammer-like fist and a brambleback's burning claws came crashing down. Clang! Ikaruga met the golem's fist with a slash so sharp and swift, it rang out like a bell. She cleaved through its stone knuckles in one clean cut. The severed chunk fell to the sand, the cross-section gleaming smooth and polished like a mirror. Vidaldus's hair shot out to bind the brambleback's claws. But the raging elemental beast overpowered the strands, slapping him backward and smashing him straight into the belly of one of the airborne gromps. Both staggered from the impact. Two gromps slashed out with their tongues, fat, muscular, and coated in dark purple venom. One tongue caught only Ikaruga's sleeve. She slashed it off instantly, but the venom had already soaked through. She winced at the sting on her forearm and immediately severed the entire sleeve, tossing it away. Her arm tingled, already reacting to the poison. The other tongue wrapped tightly around Vidaldus's neck. His eyes bulged. The venom's acidic burn crept across his skin while the crushing pressure of the tongue choked the breath from his lungs. Chapter 390, Trinity Raven, all destroyed. Ikaruga struck again, swiftly eliminating both the grump and the merc wolf that were closing in. Though the grump vanished in a puff of dispersed magic, Vidaldus's condition had visibly worsened. His face was turning a sickly shade of purple. He collapsed to the sand, coughing violently as he desperately tried to use his animated hair to absorb the venom coiled around his throat. He looked like a wreck. His beloved guitar was nearly bitten in half, and 4 deep punctures on his shoulders oozed fresh blood. A dull ache throbbed in his gut from where the brambleback had slammed him earlier, likely bruised organs, if not worse. Meanwhile, a cluster of mini Krugs had latched onto the joints of his legs, relentlessly gnawing through tendons like they were chewing through bark. This so-called death metal singer now looked like he really was about to die. Rhodes, seeing that his summon golem had lost a hand in the melee, dismissed it and replaced it with a fresh one. It was fine if a summoned creature got injured, but if one was destroyed outright, it might weaken the spell's duration or trigger a penalty. Better safe than sorry. The brambleback, still full of energy after its earlier strike, sprouted fresh vines that whipped across the sand, trying to tangle up both Ikaruga and Vidaldus. Its main body lunged toward Vidaldus with raised claws, preparing for a follow-up blow. Ikaruga's blade flashed like lightning, and with a single swift motion, she lopped off the brambleback's left claw. Its spark-like arm tumbled away, cleanly severed. Unlike the rocky golem, its defense was weaker, easier to split. Based on her experience fighting wild summons, Ikaruga assumed this one would vanish shortly after losing a limb. But to her surprise, new vines immediately sprouted from the wound, twitching, growing rapidly as if regenerating a lost limb. Even before it finished regrowing, the brambleback stumbled forward again, raising its remaining claw to attack. A regenerative type? Ikaruga murmured. With no time to waste, she rushed in again, this time slashing upward toward the large glowing red orb on the brambleback's neck. It was oversized, conspicuous, clearly the core. Her katana swept upward, fast and deadly, but it met only air. The brambleback had vanished. Rhodes appeared from behind where it stood, his fist already hurtling toward her face. It wasn't just a normal punch. His dragon-enhanced arm, already reinforced by mountain dragon soul, was now encased in heavy stone, turning it into something like a massive rock gauntlet. It came crashing down like a falling boulder. But Ikaruga wasn't easy prey. Even though his strike was crude and telegraphed, she responded instantly, rotating her wrist and slicing directly at Rhodes's fist mid-swing. Clang! The air rang with the sound of steel colliding with stone. The two combatants passed each other in a blur. Chunks of rock from Rhodes's gauntlet shattered and flew across the beach. Even the protective dragon scales beneath had been split open, a thin line of blood blooming across the back of his hand. The fairy strategist is even stronger than the rumors say. Ikaruga acknowledged, landing gracefully. But my partner. She was cut off by a scream. Vidaldus's cry pierced the battle. Ikaruga's eyes snapped toward him, stunned. Myra's fist, wreathed in red, demonic fire, had landed clean across his face. The impact distorted his expression beyond recognition. Several teeth flew from his mouth, glittering with blood as they arced through the air. Vidaldus himself flew even farther than his teeth, his body launched like a rag doll, flung across the beach. Trailing behind him, two mini grugs remained stubbornly latched onto his legs, one on each knee joint, still gnawing furiously. The sight was so ridiculous it almost looked like a joke. Concentrate your forces, target the weak point, break through one enemy at a time, and eliminate them quickly and decisively before moving on to the next. That's the key to victory when you're outnumbered. Well, even though in this case, Rhodes clearly had the numerical advantage. There's only one crow left out of the three. Myra stood beside Rhodes with a cheerful tone, casually waving her hand to signal the golem to go handle the eagle she'd just punched into next week. The golem scratched its head and looked at Rhodes with glowing blue eyes. Rhodes gave it a firm nod. This guy had potential. When on duty, he only took orders from the boss, not the boss's wife. The golem stomped off toward the collapsed eagle, leaving deep pits in the sand with each heavy step. The pink-haired swordswoman, who had remained calm and elegant at the start of the battle, finally showed a serious expression. Since I joined the guild, I've never lost a fight. Today's been enlightening. Tell us who hired you. Rhodes said evenly. Do that, and we'll consider ending this here. Of course, they were still enemies. Rhodes had no intention of honoring that offer. No comment. Ikaruga didn't believe him anyway. She turned sideways, gripping the hilt of her blade in a poised AI stance. Rhodes felt a dull ache in the back of his hand and wings from their earlier clash. He wasn't eager to take that sword head-on again. Mountain Dragon's iron wall. Rhodes slammed both palms onto the sandy beach, and the ground rumbled loudly. A towering circular wall of rock erupted around Ikaruga, boxing her into a chamber no wider than 20 meters. The wall lifted Rhodes and Myra to a vantage point above, safely out of range. Earth magic? That's cute. Ikaruga said with confidence as she unsheathed her blade. A flash of white light burst forth, and chunks of the rock wall exploded outward. A long, horizontal slash had carved deep into the stone. Over 10 meters in length. And yet, nothing else happened. Rhodes stood atop the mountain wall in his normal form again, arms crossed. Sorry, but this version was specially reinforced for you. Super thick, super dense. With that last slash, you might make it through in 10 more swings. Maybe. Take over, lullaby. Myra's body gleamed with magic as she activated her transformation. In a flash, her appearance changed. She now stood in the form of the eerie, three-eyed demon spirit, complete with her unsettling ghost mask. They already tested this spell on Ikaruga earlier, and it had worked well. Now, with Rhodes' newly built mountain wall amplifying the effects, it would be a shame not to use it. I'll ask you one last time. Rhodes said firmly. Who hired you, And why are you here to kill us? Ikaruga didn't answer with words. Instead, she dashed forward, leapt at the curved rock wall, and began climbing in a determined scramble. But her climbing pace couldn't outmatch the speed of sound. Myra's lips moved softly, and a serene melody echoed throughout the mountain basin. Sweet flowers bloom with gentle light, soothing shadows deep inside. Even in thorns where the barren lies, a single rose dares to rise. What might have sounded like a lullaby to most was, to Ikaruga, a creeping curse. The melody seeped into her ears like a phantom's whisper, tugging at the edge of her mind with drowsy fingers. No matter how sharp her instincts, the sleepiness rolled in like a tide she couldn't resist. She stumbled mid-climb, an easy feat for a wizard in normal conditions, and slipped. Just in time, she jammed her katana into the stone wall, halting her fall and clinging tightly to the blade. Damn it! She muttered through clenched teeth. In battles against hypnotic or mental magic, Ikaruga's answer was always the same. Inflict pain. A shallow stab to a non-critical spot, just enough to snap her focus back. Once grounded, she could overpower the caster and break the spell. But that tactic only worked when the battlefield was even. Here, everything was stacked against her. The elevated terrain, the curved mountain wall acting like a natural echo chamber, amplifying Myra's magic-infused singing. Everything tilted in Rhodes and Myra's favor. To make things worse, the one singing the lullaby wasn't alone. Ikaruga's sharp eyes narrowed as she watched Rhodes, who had now taken on his monster summoner form. His once handsome features twisted into something bizarre and beast-like. Like a smug-toed man preparing mischief. His cheeks puffed, and he spat a round of purple venom shots from his mouth like living cannonballs, each one flying straight at her. Ikaruga had no choice but to grit her teeth, shake off the sleepiness, and dodge or slash at the poison orbs with precise swings of her blade. But she was being pushed back. Little by little, her footing slipped. She was driven down the slope until she was back on the ground again. Still, Myra's lullaby didn't stop, echoing around her in a slow, drowsy trance. And Rhodes' toxic barrage kept coming, unrelenting. Finally, the exhaustion broke her defenses. Her eyes drooped for just a second. Just enough. Too many stone beetles burrowed up beneath her and latched onto her wrist, their tiny jaws clamping down. She immediately sliced them apart. But her distraction came too late. One venom cannonball slammed into her side. Ah! Her scream rang out across the battleground, but Rhodes didn't hesitate. If anything, he doubled his firepower. Ikaruga, a swordswoman of elegant precision and unshakable poise, now had no room to display her skills. The field had crushed her advantage, turned her into a target rather than a duelist. And just like that, the third and final of the infamous Trinity Raven was defeated. Chapter 391, Simon, Enemy? Friend? Rhodes was a little winded from the fight, so he summoned another Brambleback to handle cleanup. These three were no ordinary thugs. They were infamous assassins with deep ties to the underworld. Rhodes couldn't afford to take any chances. Once he confirmed they were down for good, he let out a breath of relief and sent 2 crabs to patrol the beach perimeter. The battle had cost him nearly all his summoned wildlings, and it left him with a nagging sense of vulnerability. He and Myra both had injuries, not too serious, but noticeable enough. Reflecting on the fight, Rhodes muttered. Was I too cruel? Cruel? Myra raised an eyebrow. No. That's called being smart. They came here with the intent to kill us. Right. Rhodes nodded. By now, the beach was deserted. All the tourists had fled when the battle broke out. Only 2 were left standing, and 3 lay unconscious on the sand. Rhodes glanced around, alert. Something's off. We should head back to the hotel. With that much commotion, Mirza and the others must have noticed. Myra nodded, already sensing the same thing. If they haven't came running, they might be in trouble too. The 2 broke into a sprint, heading toward the hotel. Suddenly, a swirling black vortex appeared in their path, and from within it stepped a tall man. His right arm was bare, a white turban wrapped around his head, a black eye patch covered his left eye, and a thick iron ring circled his chin like a brace. The moment he appeared, he gave a slight nod of approval. As expected from the fairy strategist and the demon Mara Jane. You even defeated the Trinity Raven. Rhodes immediately recognized the swirling black magic. It was the same dark aura he'd sensed in the hotel room before the battle. Take over, Mountain Dragon Soul. Wait. I'm not your enemy. Roar of the Mountain Dragon. Not an enemy? This guy practically rolled out the red carpet for the assassins to ambush Myra. He helped them before the fight, hid during the whole thing, and now wanted to show up and say he wasn't an enemy? Rhodes wasn't buying it. Whoever wins. You side with them. That's not how fairy tale rolls. Simon barely raised a hand in defense. A vortex of dark magic flared to intercept the blast, but Rhodes' rock storm shattered it instantly and sent him flying. The man's turban was torn off, his clothes shredded, and he hit the ground with a painful grunt. Bruises quickly bloomed across his arms and torso as he coughed hard. Rhodes frowned, unimpressed. For someone who dropped in like some mysterious big boss, his strength was underwhelming. Cough. I was one of Riz's old comrades. The man wheezed. Rhodes cast a skeptical glance toward Myra. She shook her head. I don't recognize him. Maybe he means before Riz joined Fairy Tale? Yes. That's right. Simon winced, clutching his chest as he pushed himself upright. Rhodes wasn't letting it go that easily. If you're an old friend of Riz's, why did you help those Trinity Raven attack us? That dark spell wasn't meant for you. Simon replied, finally catching his breath. Its purpose was to capture Riza. Trinity Raven were just assigned to stall you two. Excuse me? Without missing a beat, Rhodes summoned Bramble back again. It lifted Simon into the air with one claw, gripping him tightly, ready to squeeze with a single word. Even if it sounded like he was hiding something, Rhodes wasn't about to trust a stranger just because he said a few soft words. You'd better explain yourself. Clearly. Rhodes warned, voice cold. Please. Just hear me out. Before Simon could finish, 4 figures burst out of the hotel entrance. Natsu led the charge, shouting. Rhodes. Myra. Riza and Happy have been kidnapped. Lucy, panting, caught up behind him. Mr. Rhodes. Miss Myra. Are you both okay? Gray followed close behind. Running beside him was a blue-haired girl in a flowing dress. Juvia. Juvia Loxer. Formerly one of the Element 4 of Phantom Lord. Her presence wasn't a surprise. Ever since she'd been released by the Magic Council, she'd been quietly watching over Gray from a distance. Just a few days ago, she'd secretly bought a necklace shaped like the Fairy Tale emblem and started wearing it close to her heart. She was still working up the courage to officially ask to join the guild. She had changed so much that those unfamiliar with her wouldn't have recognized her at first glance. But Rhodes and Myra weren't focused on Juvia right now. Their eyes widened at Natsu's words. Riza and Happy were kidnapped. Rhodes repeated. A weird cube guy blindsided me and snatched Happy. Natsu growled, fists shaking. Damn it. I let my guard down. Yes. Lucy chimed in urgently. Riza and I were attacked. There was a blonde girl with dark skin who used some kind of card magic, and a catwoman too. And. She abruptly pointed at Simon, who was still trapped in the claws of the tree monster. Ah. That's him. He was with them. Gray's expression turned icy as he got a better look. You bastard. You're the one who attacked me. If I hadn't used a substitution spell. He stormed up to the man, glaring. Who are you? Gray-sama, please wait. Juvia stepped between them, placing a hand on his chest. He might not be the enemy. She explained quickly. I know dark magic when I see it. The caster who used it earlier. This man. He deliberately attacked your substitute instead of you. He knew you used molding magic to switch out. Natsu wasn't convinced. He stepped forward, eyes burning. You jerk. Give us back Riza and Happy. Voices overlapped, accusations flying, but Rhodes quietly processed it all. So while he and Myra were being ambushed by the Trinity Raven, the others had also been attacked. Riza and Happy had been taken. But Natsu, Gray, Lucy, and Juvia had all come out of it unharmed. Rhodes glanced at Juvia, noting the Fairy Tale emblem on her necklace. Anyone targeting Fairy Tale should have considered her a target, too. And yet, they left her alone? That was strange. If the attackers were after the guild, Juvia should have been taken out too. How exactly was Riza captured while the others weren't? Was there some sort of special magic involved? And then there was this man. Simon. With his iron chin, conveniently popping up now. He'd helped the enemy set up their ambush, yet also helped Gray maintain a fake-out? He aided in Riza's abduction, yet claimed to be her former comrade? It was like he was trying to sabotage the enemy from within while still helping them. A double agent? Don't get flustered. Listen to me first. Rhodes spoke with urgency and clarity, his words cutting through the tension like a blade. Do you know which direction they went? That way. Natsu pointed out over the open sea. The horizon stretched wide and empty. No ships, no sails, nothing but the endless ocean breeze. Myra, find us 2 small boats. Big enough to carry everyone. We're heading out immediately. Lucy, summon one of your more reliable celestial spirits. Send them to the nearest town to find a communication lacrima and report everything to the master. Natsu, Gray, tell me everything you know about the people who attacked you. Whoever had managed to capture Riza wasn't just some random thug. This was someone dangerous. They couldn't afford to waste time. Until they knew the enemy's goal, Riza and Happy could be in serious danger. They needed to move fast. And be ready for backup. As Rhodes calmly issued instructions, the group's earlier confusion and panic began to settle. His leadership grounded them. Rhodes then turned to the blue-haired girl standing slightly apart from the others. Juvia. You. He hesitated. She had been an enemy once. The safest course might be to ask her to step away, but she was strong. And from what he'd seen recently, she didn't seem hostile at all. Juvia stepped forward, her voice resolute. Juvia wishes to help. Juvia wants to join Fairy Tale. She'd once whispered those words to Gray in secret. Saying it now, openly, even in front of Myra, the one who'd once defeated her, felt much easier. Rhodes looked to Gray for guidance. Bring her. Gray said simply. Juvia just stood up for me. I trust her. My Lord Gray. Juvia squealed, stars in her eyes, forming a heart shape with her hands. Gray let out a heavy sigh. Or maybe I don't. All right then. Rhodes nodded, hiding a smirk. Juvia, you'll be responsible for watching him. He gestured towards Simon, who was still bound in the monster's grip. We still can't fully trust him. Interrogate him on the way. He looked over the team. Let's move. Chapter 392, Our System. A blue-haired young man stepped out from the shadows. He wore a hooded robe, his expression unreadable. Did you bring her back, Wally? He asked coolly. Yeah. Replied the man with the sharply chiseled face. You want to see her, Joel? Just be careful, will you? A gentleman and all that. Joel gave a slow shake of his head. Where are the Trinity Raven? They were still fighting when we left. Sounded intense. We heard the commotion coming from the beach. Simon stayed behind to retrieve them. You idiot. Joel muttered, narrowing his eyes. I said they were just a distraction, not assassins. But the ceremony's scheduled for tomorrow. There's no more time. Joel interrupted. Start the ceremony now. Now. We're not fully prepared. Joel turned his back and walked away. Tell the others to prepare for our guests. I'll take care of the final arrangements. Meanwhile, at the Magic Council headquarters, 9 counselors quickly entered the main chamber, cloaks rustling with urgency. Ultra was already inside, speaking with Counselor Belno. Lady Belno, I heard you released a high-risk prisoner not long ago. Belno responded calmly. Just a misguided young man, corrupted by Jose. With the right guidance, even those can be reformed. She paused, giving Ultra a sidelong glance. Though I'm not sure this is the right moment for that discussion. The impatient Michello barked from across the room. It's the middle of the night. What emergency required a full council summon? C. Grain, lounging against the wall until now, finally stepped forward. It's something of great importance. Where is the chairman? Someone else asked. The chairman is currently unreachable, said Org, standing at the front. As vice chairman, I will preside over this session. He motioned for everyone to take their seats, then turned a stern eye on C. Grain. You'd better make this worth our time. If this is another joke, I'll personally file to revoke your council credentials. Power isn't some toy for a child to play with. Org had never liked C. Grain. Too young, too smug, too powerful for his own good. Some said he only got his council seat because of his immense magical ability and title among the 10 wizard saints. But now, C. Grain's usual smirk faded. He clasped his hands on the table and spoke with a rare seriousness. Then I'll get right to it. Does the discovery of the R system qualify as an emergency? The words echoed in the chamber. Everyone froze. What? Back aboard the ship, Rhodes was visibly shaken. The R system? Isn't that the magic used to bring people back from the dead? Simon, who was tied up but seated nearby, gave a solemn nod. Yes. But the cost is immense. An enormous amount of magical power, and a living sacrifice with exceptional magical aptitude. Lucy looked bewildered. Wait. Resurrection? What are you all talking about? Seeing the others just as confused, Rhodes took a moment to explain. The R system. Full name, Revive System. It's a forbidden magic designed to resurrect the dead, by sacrificing a living person in their place. He paused grimly before continuing. It goes against the core principles of both magic and humanity. It's an absolute taboo. 8 years ago, a black magic cult poured vast resources into constructing 7 R systems. The council intervened and destroyed all of them. Lucy covered her mouth in horror. That's horrible. Trading one life for another? That kind of magic shouldn't exist. As expected of the fairy strategist. Simon said with quiet admiration. You even know about his hidden history. Despite being beaten and bound, Simon felt surprisingly reassured. Cautious. Capable. Strong. These people, he was sure now, would save Rosa. Rhodes looked up at the sky, exhaling softly. Myra gently held Rhodes' hand. When he looked over, she gave him a warm smile and shook her head, Her eyes filled with a mix of emotion and worry. The others may not have understood how Rhodes knew so much about the R system, but she did. All too well. She hadn't realized until now just how far he had gone for her. Quietly investigating such dangerous and forbidden magic, all without her knowing. Had he actually tried to tamper with such a taboo, Myra would never have been able to forgive herself. This wasn't the right time to talk about it, but she silently resolved to make it clear to him later, never do something so reckless again. Not for her. Gray, catching the key detail, narrowed his eyes. Wait. You're saying Mirza and Happy are going to be used as living sacrifices for some kind of resurrection ritual? Simon shook his head. Not both. Mirza is the intended sacrifice. The little cat was probably just taken because one of my companions has a thing for cats. Huh? Just because they like cats, they took Happy? Natsu growled, sparks of anger flashing in his eyes. Why don't they go hatch an egg or something? Hatch? Eggs? Simon blinked in confusion, as if he had been locked up in the Tower of Heaven so long that he no longer understood the jokes of the outside world. Natsu, eyes forward. Don't get distracted. Rhodes reminded calmly. Then he turned to Simon. Go on. Why, Mirza? The small group was now sailing across open waters. Two sturdy river crabs were pulling a pair of wooden boats side by side, skimming across the sea with surprising speed. Rhodes and Myra sat in one boat with Simon, keeping a close eye on him while continuing the interrogation. The second boat carried Gray, Lucy, and Juvia, while Natsu led from the front, riding one of the crabs and using his nose to track Mirza's scent. Simon had already explained the goal of kidnapping Mirza and shared what he knew about his companion's abilities, which matched what Lucy and Natsu had described. The man who used cube-based magic was straightforward enough. But the dark-skinned boy who used enchanted cards, and the feline-eared girl who specialized in binding magic? They were trouble. The card mage could trap someone within a card before they realized it. Without specialized magic to counter it, escape was almost impossible. As for the cat girl, her ropes carried powerful sealing enchantments. They functioned like portable magic sealing stones. If someone got ambushed, it was practically game over. If the two of them struck Mirza when she wasn't prepared. And especially since they used Lucy as bait. It wasn't unreasonable to think they could have taken her. But, according to Simon, Mirza may have had other reasons for not resisting at all. 8 years ago. Simon began solemnly. All of us, including Mirza, were kidnapped by a black magic cult. They used us as laborers to build the R system. We were just kids. Cold, starving, and forced to work under brutal conditions. He clenched his fists at the memory. We couldn't take it anymore. We planned an escape. But we got caught. Jell stepped forward to take the blame. They dragged Mirza away instead. When they were beating her to death. It was Jell who broke out of his cell, killed 3 guards, and tried to save her. He was subdued in the end. And punished in her place. Simon's voice tightened with frustration. He hated having to admit this, hated that it wasn't him who had acted. If only he had been stronger back then. He would have taken those beatings himself. The group fell quiet. They hadn't expected this kind of backstory. Jell had managed to kill 3 armed guards with no magic, just sheer will? Incredible. Simon continued, voice heavy. We couldn't bear it anymore. Under Riz's lead, we started resisting. Many were hurt. Many more fell. And Rob, our dear Grandpa Rob, gave his life protecting us. Simon turned to them with tears brimming in his eyes. He bore the same mark on his back. The same guild emblem as all of you. What? Chapter 393, The Darkness in Her Heart, We Will Seal It. Simon reached for his face, brushing a finger near the scarred edge where his left eye used to be. The memory stung. Back then, Mirza suddenly awakened her magic. She led us to fight back and defeated the guards with overwhelming courage. The name Rob was unfamiliar to Rhodes. Curious, he glanced at Myra and Gray, but both shook their heads. According to Simon, Rob had already been quite old when they met him. He once claimed to be a wizard from a legal guild, but after leaving the guild life, his magical power had declined severely. If not, he wouldn't have been caught and forced into labor at the Tower of Heaven. Hearing that even elder wizards had suffered under the hands of the black magic cult, everyone fell into a quiet, simmering anger. The pain of a generation's sacrifice weighed on them. Especially when the ones responsible had long since vanished into the shadows. Simon continued. We eventually hijacked a ship belonging to the cult. Mirza went to rescue Jell, who was being tortured in solitary confinement. The rest of us waited, thinking we'd all escape together. But Simon paused, face tightening. Then, Jell came running back alone. He said Mirza had planted a magic bomb on the ship and ordered us all to abandon it immediately. The ship exploded moments after we jumped into the water. What? Myra and Lucy gasped in shock. That's impossible. Gray exclaimed, practically leaping from his boat into Rhodes. Mirza would never do something like that. We didn't want to believe it either, Simon said solemnly. But after what we saw, it was hard to argue. He lowered his voice. Jell told us it was because Mirza had obtained magic in the wrong way. He claimed that the power had corrupted her, that she wanted to erase the shame of her past. Even if it meant killing us. Simon clenched his fists in frustration. Truth is, none of us know what really happened during those few minutes when she went to rescue him. Gray breathed heavily and slowly backed down, his expression stern. So everything is just Jell's version of the story? Simon nodded. Yes. But when the ship exploded, and we were still alive, everyone believed him. They trusted him. We followed his lead and helped rebuild the Tower of Heaven. He closed his eyes. Jell was different. He fed us, gave us clothes, spoke of a paradise. He said we were building something for our future. A tower that would bring freedom. A place where we'd never be powerless again. And so we kept building. Day after day. For 8 years. He looked at them, pain flickering behind his calm voice. Over time, people began to hear rumors from the outside. News about Urza. How she had become a great wizard. A hero. The resentment grew. They felt betrayed. Abandoned. But me. He paused, eyes softening. I never gave up on her. I just pretended to follow Jell, so I could stay close and wait for the right moment. Rhodes narrowed his eyes but made no move to untie Simon. His voice was firm. If you trusted Urza so much, then why didn't you take her and escape in secret when night fell? Why go along with those other lunatics and attack us instead? Because I've been waiting for the right moment. Specifically, when powerful wizards like all of you would be gathered together. Simon said earnestly, his voice rising with emotion. Jell is too powerful. Only by combining your strength can we stand a chance of defeating him. And truly saving Mirza. Gray and Natsu were momentarily moved by his sincerity. Rhodes, however, just wanted to say, seriously? What the hell, man? If that was your plan, you should have told us from the start. He snapped. What if one of us got hurt? Or worse? He wasn't wrong. If Simon had explained things earlier, Mirza could have joined them to take on the Trinity Raven. With her strength, the fight would have been a breeze. And more importantly, they wouldn't be racing against an invisible clock while their friends were in danger. Simon replied with complete honesty. I needed to see if you were strong enough. If any of you died just from that, then I wouldn't have put my hopes on you. You. Gray was visibly furious, his fists clenched. You've made Lord Gray angry. You will sink. Juvia muttered ominously, her aura turning cold and stormy. Lucy took an instinctive step back. W.O. She's scary when she says that. Rhodes didn't even know where to begin with this guy. He was just too honest, and honestly infuriating. And worse. He was stupid. There were so many better ways Simon could have handled this. He could have gone to the Magic Council. He could have contacted Fairy Tale directly and requested a coalition of legal guilds to storm the Tower of Heaven. He could have reported to the kingdom's authorities, or reached out to powerful mages in neighboring countries. Fiori is huge. There's no way someone, somewhere, couldn't have helped. Even if none of that worked, couldn't he at least have warned them? Given them a heads up before springing this whole disaster on them? They could have tried to reason with or detain Simon's misguided comrades. They could have taken out the Trinity group cleanly. They could have actually planned this rescue. But instead, they were flying blind, rushing in without Rizza's strength, with Rhodes now forced to consider how to destroy the tower without endangering Rizza or Happy, whose lives were now tied to some unknown ticking clock. Simon might not have been acting in bad faith. But he clearly had zero strategic sense. You waited 8 years for this. And this was your master plan? Rhodes wanted to scream. What an awful teammate. It made his blood boil. Lucy, trying to make sense of it, asked. But if this was so serious, why didn't Rizza ever tell us? If she had just told the master back then. Gray rubbed his chin, thinking about their guild master. If she had told the master 8 years ago, maybe the old man would have shown up, decked Jell in the face, and shut this whole thing down. Maybe they had leverage, like hostages. Myra said thoughtfully. Rizza probably saw everyone in that tower as her companions. So she never dared reveal anything. She must have been tormented by guilt and fear all these years. That's probably why she always wears armor. Myra knew her old rival better than most. If it hadn't been for her former companions suddenly turning on her, and Lucy being taken hostage, Rizza never would have been captured so easily. Of course she's like that. Gray muttered, eyes shadowed by memory. I still remember. Back when we were kids, I saw Rizza hiding somewhere, crying all alone. He once believed that Rizza had changed over the years. But now, it was clear, she had always been carrying that pain. She just buried it beneath steel. That armor wasn't just for battle. It was a shield for a fragile heart pretending to be strong. But it doesn't matter now. Gray said, his voice resolute. We'll seal away the darkness in her heart. No one spoke, but everyone could feel the weight of his words. Really? You mean that? Simon's voice trembled, eyes brimming with tears. For 8 long years, he'd lived among those who hated and distrusted Ursa.